I worked full time, and 5.5 years later, I graduated from college. I didn't break glass ceilings, I crashed them. I was a woman in a man's field all of my life. Let's not weaken our children. Let's empower them. Let's not tell them they are less. Let's tell them the sky's the limit. That's all I have to say.
Great, thank you, Maureen. All right, any other members of the public would like to comment? Raise your hand or the hand symbol so we can see. All right, I see no one else. Child or other board members, do you see someone else? Scan across the tiles here. All right, I don't see anyone else, so we'll go ahead and wrap up public comment then. On the agenda, board member comment. All right, several hands up here. Maureen Williams, you want to go ahead?
The right Maureen this time. In light of the recently circulated flyer, I wish to voice my support for our superintendent. I believe that Dr. Harrison has behaved with grace and humility in times that are unprecedented for our district and our nation. He has stewarded our district through COVID-19 and acted as a beacon of honesty and kindness for our students and faculty alike. The recent flyers circulated to Reading and prior ones circulated in Easton are largely misguided attempts to curtail the absolute right of any individual, including our superintendent, to express his or her personal beliefs free of recrimination or punishment. That flyer places the onus on the speaker to safeguard the feelings and perceptions of the listener in a way that is inconsistent with necessary and healthy adult communication, and with a debate and discussion that should be a robust part of any healthy organization, and in fact, a part of our community and national discourse. I urge the authors of that flyer and others to first hold up the mirror to themselves and ask themselves whether or not they wish to impose their belief systems upon others, under the guise of dislike for someone else's point of view. Tolerance, too, is displayed by our superintendent in spades and is the key to any well-organized society and any well-organized institution. It should be a central facet of ours. I thank Dr. Harrison for his service to date on behalf of our district and our kids.
Thank you. All right, Mike, I saw your hand as well.
Thanks. And yes, so my comments as well reflect my sentiments as an individual board member, but I felt like I wanted to say something. So on April 30th, I was extremely disappointed to receive a mailer, a large yellow card detailing comments the superintendent posted to a personal page on a social media platform. The comment was in reaction to the unlawful entry to the U.S. Capitol building and other alleged criminal violations that horrified many Americans on January 6, 2021. The mailer contained outdated contact information and incorrectly listed me as vice chair. Sorry, Cheryl. But over the past few weeks, I've received more than 45 emails from thoughtful parents, residents, and even some former students. The overwhelming majority, 42 of the 45, expressed support for Dr. Harrison and condemned the biased undertones in the text of the mailer. As an individual board member, I fully support Dr. Harrison and the work he has done guiding our district through this most challenging year. And in my time on the Region 9 board, we have worked hard to foster a learning environment free of hatred and biases. We do not operate in a vacuum, and we continue to welcome parents and members of the community to attend all of our public meetings to become better informed and aware of the exceptional education our children receive at Joe Barlow High School. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think Cheryl, I lost her on the screen.
Oh, yeah, I have a comment.
There we go. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I have to figure out how to not raise
window.
my hand. I have actually two comments, one comment and a request. So I do want to echo Maureen and Mike's comments, and I want to personally thank all those Reading and Easton residents for taking the time to send emails and for sharing thoughts in support of the good work Dr. Harrison and our teams have been doing for Joe Barlow High School. As an individual board member on Region 9, I wholeheartedly supported hiring Dr. Harrison as the superintendent of ER9 schools, and it was a unanimous vote from what I recall. Also, as an individual Region 9 board member, Reading resident, parent of 2 Barlow students, and a Barlow grad, I continue to support him and our efforts in diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's been very helpful to hear the insights of Reading and Easton residents that Dr. Harrison and his team is providing the leadership that is needed for our schools. This further supports that ER9 made the right choice. And just an agenda item request. I don't know if it's appropriate to do now. I do want to add something to the agenda with respect to textbooks.
Sure. Just looking to do here. Maybe it's in discussion, possible action. And so maybe wait till we get there. We'll get through some of the other items.
Okay.
Look to Mike, any objection to that from a procedural?
I have no objection. In fact, maybe we could add to it like a discussion of course offerings and approval of textbooks or something, because I do have a question relating to some course offerings. So, but we can add it later.
We'll add it when we get to, if the other board members are all in agreement, we'll add it in when we get down to discussion, possible action items, and add that agenda item. It was something we overlooked on the agenda, so we do need to add it in. Okay. Any other board member comment? Mary Lee.
Hi, I don't have a prepared statement. However, I just want to reaffirm as an individual board member, my support for Dr. Harrison and all of the fantastic work he's doing for our school and our community. So thank you.
Thank you. And then Karen, I think I saw your hand as well.
I'll keep it brief. I would just like to restate my support of Dr. Harrison in light of the flyer recently posted to all Reading residents. Dr. Harrison has repeatedly apologized for a message that he posted on his private Facebook page in January. The flyer was made to seem as if it was a recent issue, and the writers intended to resurrect this in order to smear Dr. Harrison with inflammatory rhetoric and fear-mongering, which honestly smacked of racism. I would hope that we can all move on from such unfortunate divisiveness and support Dr. Harrison and the schools in general as he navigates our way to better days ahead for our towns, our staff, and our students. Thank you.
Thank you. And Gwen.
I can't say it any better than my fellow board members have said it, but as an individual board member, I would also like to express my continued support for Dr. Harrison and the work he's done for us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other board member comments? All right, I'd like to do one quick presentation. I think I'd like to do it now as opposed to later for the next board member comment section, which will be probably much later in the evening, and take advantage of the crowd that we have on here. As most people probably know, this is Dr. Pinn's last regular board meeting with us. She will not be with us in the June meeting for some planned, I think, vacation at that time. So we wanted to, as a board, take the opportunity to thank her for all of her service over the years from July 2008, if I'm not mistaken, all the way through June of 21 of this year. So seen a lot of different changes and have been to a lot of meetings with us over the years. So we definitely appreciate all of your service and all the late nights and meetings with us and all the contributions. So on behalf of the board, we all chipped in, and we have, and I'm going to show you a picture here if I can share out, and then I'll turn it over to Karen as well. So give me 1 minute. So Karen, I don't know if you want to say something, I'll bring the...
Oh.
Well, we all chipped in as board members to...
We did.
And I'll bring up
Let
the
me find
picture. So
one.
hopefully you can see this. So we've got... we chipped in to help you on your days of leisure. In retirement. We will be delivering this to you soon. And Karen, I know you were working on a statement as well.
We took a cue from your favorite quote. Hold on now, I wasn't ready. Sorry. You always sign your emails with it. Oh my God, hold on. Sorry.
Put you on the spot.
Anyway, you know what your quote is.
Well,
And we thought that would be a nice way that you could remember us and you could actually relax while so, out in the sunshine.
Exactly. Dial into meetings in case you miss us and
Yeah.
see how, in a much more comfortable chair and hopefully in a better location than inside.
It's going to
So,
have a little plaque on it, but we,
oh,
so.
that is wonderful. Thank you so much. I think, Karen, the words you were looking for were "be well." That's how I end every email.
Oh,
with,
no, it wasn't your, it was the quote from the one about working
So
hard.
many quotes. Oh, for something that you care about. It's not work. That's your passion, right? When you
That's
when
the
you
one.
work hard for something you care about. And that sums up my career at Barlow and the amazing people that I am leaving behind to continue this work and bring us into that next phase of thriving after this very difficult year. I thank the board. That was so wonderful and unexpected. And I do really appreciate the time that you put in as volunteers to our school and leading us and making these decisions. And you talk about the late meetings that we sit through, but you're the ones doing the work. And I appreciate especially the role of committees these past few years. Has just been a wonderful time to have those conversations and really move learning and education forward. So thank you very much. I will think of you. Well, I can't guarantee I'm going to watch the board meetings from that chair, but I will think of you all fondly. Thank you.
great. Thank you. And we'll get to that too. We are hoping to have this meeting in person, but we will get the chair to you for the future. And thank you again for everything. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, we'll move on then to administrative reports, item 6 on the agenda. And the first one up we have is the superintendent report from Dr. Harrison. And you should be a co-host, I think, still. And just before you start, for the record, we are now live on the YouTube channel. I was able to overcome the technical problem, so we are streaming there as well as recording. So Dr. Harrison, all yours.
Great. First, before I jump into the content of my report, I just want to take a moment and say a special thank you to our board members for your comments. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the public support, but I also appreciate your support of the work that we've been doing since coming here and really just building on the good work that has happened before I got here. And so I'm excited to continue moving that work forward and excited and appreciative to have board members that are that I can really partner with and in collaboration with the community and our staff and our leaders to do really good work on behalf of our students. And just a moment to Dr. Penn, just saying congratulations as well. There are two things that I'm always excited to hear. One is I get really excited when I hear people tell me that their children got jobs after college, because I'm just really hopeful that that's going to happen for us one day really soon. And then I'm also really excited to hear about people in their retirement, because that gives me hope that that one day I will be able to sit in a chair like that. But I know that the good work that you've been doing with our students doesn't end just because you are taking this period to retire, but I'm sure that very soon that you'll find another way to continue having a significant impact on the world of education, whether it's our students, students across the world, people who are working with our students at some time in their careers. And I just am really proud and happy to be able to call you a colleague. So thank you, Gina. Tonight, I want to take a moment and talk about the federal funds that we have received through our COVID-related federal grants. So I'm going to take a moment, if you will allow me, and I'll share my screen. There's been a lot of talk about these funds over the last several months. And so I thought that this would be, just based on some previous conversation that we had, I felt like this would be a good opportunity to just take a moment and go through what the funds we've received to date have been and how those funds were used. So the first coronavirus relief funds we received for Region 9, $102,879. These are funds that were used to reimburse eligible expenses that the district incurred between last spring and then ending in December 2020, December 30th, 2020. I remember starting in August with the district and Mr. Rice reporting out on just kind of a running list of how we were identifying some of those expenses that we would then use these coronavirus relief funds to reimburse. These were related to things like PPE. There was a staffing component, but really that was a very small amount of money, I think about just over $5,000. And that was related to starting the year with some additional support on buses. I remember as part of the reopening plan, that was really just to make sure that we were, that students were following all of those initial bus rules at the start of the year. And so that's what that money was designed for. And then the second round of funding that we received was our ESSER 1 funds. And ESSER is an acronym, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. And we used those funds to purchase 77 Chromebooks. And it was to close, not the gap, but close the gap for technology and really being able to go one-to-one. That would help us to do the distance learning, whether we were in hybrid or full distance learning, and we were able to have those devices available to students. Since the release of the ESSER 1 funds, we have been talking about the ESSER 2 funds. That amount for Region 9 was $85,632. These were the funds that I reported about at our last meeting. Right before that meeting, that's when the application was due to the state. The state gave districts 4 priority areas to focus the use of those funds. You'll see those here: academic support, learning loss, learning acceleration and recovery, family and community connections, school safety, and SEL. And that's the social emotional well-being of the whole child, but also looking at our school staff, and then remote learning, staff development, and closing the digital divide. I shared at our last meeting that we focused all, and these funds are last for 2 years and expire in fall of 2023. And so the application that we submitted to the state focused all of our these $85,000 plus $85,600 towards academic.
I think he froze.
Yep, I will give him a second. I think froze.
Learning. Dr. Pierson Ugol spent some time talking about the use of interns and as a way to focus those funds on small group instruction and being able to provide student support. The next level of funding that is the largest amount to date is the ARP ESSER funds, the American Rescue Plan, or what some people are calling ESSER 3. This is the largest amount to date. It's $192,317. That's the total amount. It is important to note with all of the 3 ESSER grants that we've excuse me, that we've received so far from the federal government, it's money that was allocated to districts using our Title I ratios. So the state took the percent of, divided up the money between districts based on the percent of Title I or Title I students or students eligible to receive free or reduced lunch. For this $192,000 grant, the federal government is requiring a 20% set aside, and that's that $38,000 that you see there. That set aside is districts are required to use that those funds to specifically address academic learning loss. Now, all of the caveats that come with this federal grant, with the ARP-ESSER funds, are coming to us directly from the federal government. So you've heard us try to be really intentional about moving away from the term academic learning loss and really thinking more about unfinished learning and acceleration rather than approaching it from a deficit standpoint. But I put that term there because that's the term that the feds use in giving us the grant requirements. For this grant, the state has revised the state level priorities where there's a focus on learning acceleration, academic renewal, and student enrichment. So that's revised language from the first one. The second is still family and community connections. 3 is looking at this.
All right, we'll give them a second here.
You know if his screen freezes?
Yeah, it's still frozen.
Difficult. He doesn't know until it unfreezes that he's been frozen.
Okay, and we totally lost him. So I think he's totally disconnected.
And for the record, he's at home. He's our band.
There he was back.
Really good. So.
All right, we lost your final comments there, Dr. Harrison. Froze up again.
So the funny part was I was actually talking about the digital divide, and as I started getting text messages that I froze. So maybe we can use some of those funds. I'm not even going to joke about that. None of these funds will be used for my own personal Wi-Fi. The one thing that I was saying is that as part of the requirements, that there are 3 requirements for this fund, for these funds.
Frozen again.
All right, well, we'll get the 3 requirements for the funds when he reconnects here. Why don't we move on to Dr. Pierson, Ugol's report for Assistant Superintendent. And do you want me to share any of the materials out of your packet, or just talk to them?
I'm happy just to talk to them.
Okay, perfect.
So I'll focus my presentation this evening on the portion of my report this month that has to do with the consulting update. And so just to remind the board and members of the public that our use of consultants at Joel Barlow High School is connected to the larger 3-phase model in our work to provide safe and inclusive communities. And the 3 phases of the framework begin with reviewing assets and challenges, and then developing a theory of action, and finally developing and implementing a plan. So the consultants from the Connecticut Center for School Change have been focused most recently on an equity audit. And that's broken down into 2 different categories. The first part has to do with focus groups. So in the month of May, they have been running focus groups for students, staff, and for parents. And the goal of the focus groups is to develop an understanding of the perceptions of students, teachers, staff, and parents regarding the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at Joel Barlow. and then to gather information from students about their experiences. This is all completely optional. Students, parents, staff had the opportunity to request to participate in the focus groups. And then finally, after all of the focus groups are concluded, then the consultants will come back together, both with the administrative team at the building and central office level, as well as the Joel Barlow diversity group, and talk about recommendations for further work in order to ensure that each and every student has an inclusive and equitable experience at our high school. The focus groups for students, there are 6 sessions for students. 53 students altogether chose to participate. For parents, there are 3 sessions. There are 23 parents who chose to participate in those focus groups. For certified staff, there are 5 sessions, and there will be 34 teachers altogether. And for our support staff, there are 4 sessions and 31 participants altogether. Again, that was all absolutely optional. But as you can hear, a number of people have chosen to participate and provide the consultants some feedback and input, and that will be really helpful information moving forward. The second part of the equity audit has to do with demographic data analysis and collection. So I can talk a little bit about the areas in which they did that analysis, but something that's important to note is that the steps that needed to be taken to gather the information in order to analyze it were incredibly laborious. So I am sharing that with you because the consultants hope to have this portion of their work completed months ago, and it was not possible for them to do that because the school team and the central office team needed to go through so many steps to be sure that we could get them what they were looking for. So for instance, they were interested in doing an analysis of participation in advanced classes, honors level classes, AP classes, athletics, activities, the Honor Society, et cetera, et cetera. A number of these different, unless this is a class that would be in Power School, which would be possible to print out a document and do the type of demographic analysis that we were looking for by gender, by race. In some cases, we would have just a set of names. So for instance, students that wanted to sign up to participate in a club, then we needed to feed the names back into Power School in order to do the analysis. So this took many, many, many more weeks than we had hoped that it would take. But I'm sharing that with you because at this point, the consultants have been provided the information. It is completely anonymous. There are no names attached to any of the information that was provided. It is simply a spreadsheet that provides the counts of students, again, by gender. I explained to you all the different groups that were also included. And then they will come back to our team and share, this is what we noticed. There's a disproportionate representation of females, for example, in X type of class. And that information will be used to further our work. It will give us information about what we're currently doing at Barlow and will help us to learn more about how different groups are represented. And for the professional learning, I don't believe that there's an additional update regarding professional development, but Dr. Pinn can share that with the board. And I don't see her jumping in, so I'm guessing there's no further.
Trying to get off of mute.
I couldn't find the button. I'm sorry, Stephanie. Right, there haven't been, we've had educational sessions with both the certified staff group and the support staff group, and then we've had some sessions with everyone together. We don't have any more of those sessions planned at this point for the rest of this school year. But we do have another meeting scheduled in a couple of weeks with the Joel Barlow DEI Advisory Committee. And that's a group made up of some teachers, support staff, students, and parents and administrators in building and from central office as well. We are looking forward to looking at some of this equity audit information from our consultants, and then the direction will be set by the Barlow Advisory Group. Priorities will be set and action plans will be developed, and that becomes an internal conversation we'll be having. Jen Damaris, who is one of our assistant principals, is a key member of that committee, is a former teacher of social studies, and we'll be able to keep that work going. This isn't something that just ends at the end of this year. In fact, it really sets us up to begin and to continue this work going into next year. We're excited about that.
Right. So the balance of the work relying on the consultants versus using our internal leadership structure will shift. So certainly Region 9 was able to devote the funding of this work at the end of last year, and we could bring in outside consultants to support us. And next year, the shift will be to more internal work guided by how we receive their recommendations and how ultimately internally we decide to move forward.
All right. Thank you. We'll open it up to some questions. I think I saw a few board member hands. You don't mind, Stephanie? I think Mike, I saw your hand, and then Maureen. So Mike, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you for the report. I'm still kind of struggling to understand the progression of the work by the Connecticut Center for School Change, in that I'm not saying that I would never say that additional data and information wouldn't be helpful, but what I'm trying to understand is, and maybe you could explain to me why or how is the recommendations being driven by the equity audit? Because it seems like we're doing one thing at a time. In other words, without being an expert on the subject matter or in education, but you would think that there would be recommendations for improvements or strategies for implementation that would be universal without knowing what your equity audit results are, right? And then they could be modified or enhanced if the results of your equity audit uncover a shortcoming or another area of need. What I don't understand is that we seem to have spent a lot of money to do a whole year of surveys, auditing, and asking staff. I don't understand why we needed to pay all that money to have someone collect that data. We could have written the surveys ourselves and done that. And now we're saying that the staff now is going to drive this initiative moving forward. And I really don't understand what we did with the funds that we gave to the center. And again, maybe Dr. Harrison can help me better understand. I thought we were hiring a consultant to come in and help guide us in areas of, I don't even want to say improvement, but areas of necessity that, certain things that you should have in your program, certain ways you should be looking at things. And it seems to me like we've done a whole year of surveys and audits, and now we're going to drive the bus. And I'm a little confused by that. So just kind of clarify what I'm missing here, because I'm sure I'm missing something, right?
Let me jump in first, and then certainly I'm sure Dr. Harrison will have something to add. So I agree with what you're saying, and that's indeed what we have done. So we have been providing professional development over the course of the year. So part of the professional development, engaging staff members in a discussion and providing new information, also allows experts in this field to learn a little bit more about our staff and their perceptions and their understanding. And that also then informs the audit in terms of it being a needs assessment. They actually were not invested at all in survey work. They were invested in the focus groups at Barlow only that are also a part of the equity audit. In terms of the timing, the unfortunate timing of the demographic work coming at the end was not by intent. It was because of the obstacles that are just a part of our system, right? Naviance doesn't talk to Power School. There's a lot of what we do that's kept in very informal lists, and that in itself is something that we can learn from and say, why are we keeping sets of information in all different places? And maybe that in itself is something that we can improve, not necessarily having anything to do with the focus of this work. So I do think it has been happening concurrently. When I look at the number of hours that our consultants have invested into meetings with the Barlow Equity Group, as well as the professional development sessions, as well as the planning sessions, the cost to the district, in my mind, as someone who pays consultants on a pretty regular basis, does not seem outrageous to me. I think that they also said that they would stay true to their deliverables, and if they were not able to complete their deliverables this year, they would continue their work into next year as needed. A part of it also included meetings with a department chair, I think possibly a teacher as well as a department chair, to really take a look at our curriculum. So again, that's part of the audit, to look at our curriculum and just ask questions and learn a little bit more about what we are currently providing our students at Barlow, to help us to think about whether changes are necessary or whether we should keep doing many of the things that we have been doing. But that's also been a part of their work.
I know, Dr. Harrison, you probably want to speak, but can I just jump, because so what you said was that based upon the fact that you've hired consultants in the past, that you don't feel that this is outrageous. But I guess what my question is, would you take it a step further and say that in your professional opinion, you believe that the taxpayers, the district, and the students, we've gotten great value out of our investment this year? In other words, it's been highly productive, because I keep hearing, the assessment helps to know, and what I'm kind of seeking, and again, just correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, what should we be providing, right? I understand where understanding the needs and assessing the staff and working with the staff on what they know and what they're doing. But I guess my question is, my feeling is that the consultants should be telling us or advising us on what they feel we should be providing. And then our staff can consult with them and say, this is what we are providing, and better understand why you're saying this is what we should be providing. And those type of discussions, rather than just, I'm trying to understand the survey aspect of it.
So let's, if Dr. Pierson, Ugol, or Dr. Harrison can explain kind of the approach that was taken. I think if that's what your question is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'll jump in and talk about that. So I've seen this work around diversity, equity, and inclusion happen in a couple of different places. And so where I've seen it work out, where it's really successful, is that that the approach is very much connected to the sort of personality, the strengths, the kind of jumping off place of the individual district. So I think that there are some kind of definites, right? Like there are some things that you definitely want to have in place. And so, the consultants are coming in and they're saying, well, you definitely want to make sure that that students see themselves reflected in curriculum resources, for instance. And so then part of that is you have to dig in and assess what do students think about that now, and do we need to do that differently? I think that if we just go in with a checklist of, here are the 30 things that that you need to have in place in order to be to get to this level on a continuum on how well you're doing DEI, that it doesn't really allow for sort of some of the uniqueness of the districts to be able to come in. And so one of the things that when we were having some initial conversations with consultants, a lot of the focus was about not just going through a checklist of things to make sure that, just give us the top 5 things that we need to do, but also really building capacity so that there is an equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion lens that's developed so that we could do the work, the ongoing work of analyzing our own curriculum. What are the tools that we're using to make decisions on summer reading list, or how are we addressing inclusivity when it comes to participation in extracurricular activities going forward based on what we're learning now. So I think that, Mike, to your point, that even in the process of doing the audit and really doing the needs assessment, it also, there's a teaching component to that where where the consultants are engaging us in, here are the things that you should be looking for along the way. And so I feel like that's part of the PD process. I think that I would say going back maybe 10, 15 years ago in diversity, equity, and inclusion work, that there used to be kind of more of a almost like a checklist approach where people talked about culturally responsive teaching and culturally relevant pedagogy. And I think over time, it was clear that it's more than talking about just a set of, like a checklist set of skills, and it's more about really developing a larger framework and way of thinking and reflecting on the work that's happening on a day-to-day basis. So I will say that it's that was for me a big part of the discussions that we had with the folks from the center, kind of right from the start. That we I was a little bit leery if they would have come in with just, we're just going to do the same thing that we did 2 districts ago, and just sort of keep repeating the same process as if it's just that simple. I really did want it to be much more thoughtful than that. And I think that there's something, there's a benefit to taking that approach, because I've seen it have a more lasting impact than being, just sort of we did this for a year and now we're fixed, or we're doing it perfectly. And so that's the approach that I didn't want to take. The other part is I felt like it was really important, and I shared this in a meeting a couple of months ago with the high school staff, that that we were engaging in this work because we wanted to really reflect on in what ways are we really kind of leading this leading the work with relationship to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that it wasn't, let's bring in the consultants to fix people. And so I felt like that was, I think that there's some really, really good things happening. There's some really great courses. There was really nice opportunities for students to reflect on some different ideas. And if we're hearing that students, that some of our students, maybe recent grads, didn't recognize that some of that was happening, well, that's an opportunity for us to reflect on how explicit we are in sharing that information. And so again, I think that really, to do that well, it really did take the consultants really kind of jumping in and really getting to know sort of where we are. It's hard kind of looking back reflectively at it, and where so many of the things that we sort of engage in as new initiatives, we're able to say, we've completed that, or we're 75% of the way towards completion. And I think that this one is a little bit more challenging to get to that point more specifically. So I'm not sure if that's the perfect answer to your question, Mike, but I think that that's sort of where my head is.
It's helpful. Thank you.
Maureen, I think you had your hand up earlier.
I did, but my question really related to Dr. Harrison's prior presentation. So perhaps anyone else who has questions about this should go first.
Okay. I do have a couple questions. Any other board members, any other questions? I do have a couple of follow-up questions. So the equity audit, Dr. Pierson, when is it to be completed? What date?
We have a meeting set up with them, I want to say for the second week in June. So I believe that we will be discussing it at that point. They were given materials last week.
Okay. And I guess from a timing perspective, if possible, similar to what we did with the past summer work, it would be nice if we as the board could see some of the results of the consultant's work. So I'm not asking to, like, I don't know how many volumes of material they're going to give you on it, but something synthesized down for the board, if we can make it happen at the June regular board meeting, would be good, just so we can see some of the output of the equity audit. And then I guess a similar question then, how is the equity audit different from the diversity task force survey that we're going to be talking about here later? Can you describe the differences between the two? Because it seems, to Mike's point, we're surveying and we're doing another survey. So I'm just trying to understand the differences of the information between the two.
So the focus groups, as opposed to the demographic information analysis. So the focus group aspect of the equity audit, because these are group conversations that are facilitated by professionals, I think that there's an opportunity to probably gather more personalized information, because people will have a chance to have a back and forth dialogue with one another, again, facilitated by a trained consultant. Whereas a person completing a survey will be selecting an answer, and then there are some opportunities for them to respond to open-ended questions. But those are the two differences. They both fall into the category of creating baseline information about perceptions.
Okay, no, that's helpful. I know you said on both, so it's good to hear.
So both the surveys and the focus groups will provide information about individuals' perceptions of the extent to which our school environments are safe and inclusive.
Okay. And
right?
then
So both have the same goal of doing that, but they're very different formats. So the focus groups are much more of a discussion, and so the trained facilitator will be able to listen to a response and then ask an appropriate follow-up question, which is obviously not possible in a survey.
And then, so after the equity audit, you were saying that, or I think I heard that it'll be handed off to the faculty to then look at and move forward. So I guess my question would be, last summer we had a review that was also paid out of the funding that we offered for DEI work, and had a review done of the curriculum, and had a great presentation, a lot of good insight. So my question is, did any of that anything that was identified there get implemented this year, or is that also being held over until next year?
So my memory of the presentation that was provided to the board curriculum committee last August, and Dr. Pinn can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, was that Angela Starin and Aaron Pinsky provided the committee an overview of courses currently taught at Barlow that are sort of under the umbrella of diversity, equity, and inclusion, how topics would be addressed in an array of different courses. Those courses were all current courses, so they continue to be taught. There is some summer curriculum work planned, but the focus of that work, I'm just thinking back, has more to do with creating the world language course, which is really not related to this topic, and then reviewing some of the materials attached to the new state mandated course, which will not be in place next year. It will be for the following year. So I'm not aware of more significant revisions that were suggested for any of our current courses. And again,
I think there were a couple of courses. I think that the name and the curriculum were kind of mismatched and some other stuff. It was very good information they provided. Again, my question was, did anything get implemented out of that for this upcoming year?
Okay.
To fix some of the course naming and descriptions in the handbook and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. So that topic was planned for the Region 9 Curriculum Committee meeting. And that is, the group met last Friday, and I see Cheryl here. We did not address that topic specifically. We were bound to a 1-hour meeting. Yep. And I think that we thought we would come back to the topic in August. Is that correct, Cheryl?
Yep, that's right. So we did tee that up, and also Todd to report progress over what the staff is working on during the summer, to the extent that which is part of our normal process, right? To revisit the curriculum, look at every year, make sure that the teachers are prepared, PD, et cetera. So a lot of the learnings from the curriculum work that's being done over the summer will be integrated during the summer, could include DEI, could include other things. And then we have our normal set meeting, our regular meeting for curriculum that's been set at the beginning of the year for August 13th. And that's when it'll be reviewed, with the Barlow team. Yep.
And it would be interesting if I could jump in to see that presentation that was done so well by Mrs. Starin and Mrs. Pinsky in looking at the courses we currently offer, and then getting the student perspective of what is their perspective when they take a course of a world geo course. And that might shape where we go moving forward as well, is putting those pieces of data together. So I think it's great information. That presentation was shared with the consultants. They were especially interested in the statement that the humanities department has been drafting on the role of a teacher of the humanities. And so we're looking forward to doing that. I don't think that their work done in silos. It's connecting, and I think we're seeing that connection come forward now. Yep.
No, that's helpful. And again, that's part of my question as well, is to making sure, right, we're getting surveys, we're getting focus groups. We've already done a deep dive into curriculum and humanities. Is all that coming together? And, when will we start seeing some changes come out of that? So.
Yeah, I think that the suggestion that there's a summary in June makes good sense. Much of this will come together in the next 4 weeks, since they are actively involved with the focus groups right now, and they're analyzing the other part of the equity audit currently as well.
Okay, great.
And the final comment I wanted to make too, Todd, because I'm hearing you say, and the changes that were going to be implemented. Some of the feedback we're getting from the consultants is that we are spot on. When you look at our summer reading list, for example, or you look at some of the courses and the course descriptions, it might not be this drastic change that's needed, but rather how we're labeling courses, maybe some tweaking in some of the materials. But
I'm not saying everything.
Pleased so far in this,
Yeah, and I'm not saying everything is a drastic change, but I do recall, there were a couple that were mislabeled, or some things, some minor things that could be tweaked that we should do. So, okay. Any other questions around this? I don't want to.
Todd, I was just going to say, I would just ask the board members, to the extent that they feel, we still have board meetings during the summer. We could certainly put on the agenda in advance of the curriculum committee meeting on August 13th. And should the board decide they could delegate some of the work during the summer. Just because we only have one meeting scheduled doesn't mean that I would presume that we, as long as the staff is ready, I think there would be anything that would preclude us from meeting in addition to the August 13th meeting, should the board decide to delegate something to curriculum.
Yep,
Well, curriculum can meet whenever they want, right? So you can hold additional meetings. I think that would be great.
yeah,
I
I'd
think
be in favor of that.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, again, just so that we're transparent, that we, it sounds like, again, that there have not been any modifications to the curriculum that have been made at this point, which again is what we have been saying. But as we are going to start to recommend those changes, we trust our curriculum committee to do the hard work of sorting through that and consulting with the staff. But I do feel like it would be beneficial to the public if we did bring those reports forward to the full board meeting, so that everyone is aware of what we're doing. Because again, it's not any different than what we always do. I'm just saying, I think it's important that we state that that's our process for members of the public, that they fully understand that we're not going to make changes at a curriculum meeting that everyone else is not aware of. We're going to bring it back in the full board, and we'll have the discussion and the presentation so that everyone is aware of what we're doing. So,
yeah, good point. Thank you. All right, why don't we go ahead and move on then to finance and operations, Mr. Zachery? And would you like me to share any of the reports? I've got them pulled up here.
Yes,
sorry.
please, sir.
Maureen was waiting to ask
Maureen,
this question.
yes, sorry. Before we move on, yes, Maureen.
I'll keep it
Thank
brief.
you.
I'm sorry, I'll keep it brief.
No,
I
that's
just
all right.
wanted to ask Dr. Harrison about his presentation a little bit, because it has to do with funds that are received by the district, which is important to all of us. Dr. Harrison, did you have to do those grant writing proposals in order to receive those monies, or were they automatically granted to the district? And in addition, what kind of reporting requirements are you bound by now that the monies have been received, in terms of reporting back to the people that gave it to us?
Great questions. So I mentioned a number of grants. The coronavirus relief funds and the first ESSER grant, they weren't comprehensive grants the way that ESSER 2 was, where we really had to. ESSER 2 was the big shift. So for this ESSER 2 grant, we had to create goals with SMART goals, and so the goals were specific, measurable, attainable, time bound, and really had to lay out our strategies of how were these funds going to be used to get to that goal, and they had to be approved by independent auditors from at the State Department of Education. For the ESSER, the ARP ESSER fund, so that's the one where we have to get stakeholder input in order to develop the strategies for that. That we haven't started working on that grant yet, although we have some idea, but that grant will have to be approved. That grant is due on August 16th, although the SDE said that they'll review them. If we have our plans done before then, they'll review and approve those grants prior to that. But part of that grant requirement is that we have to provide status updates to the state every 6 months on our progress on our goals. Another piece that I was just mentioning when I froze related to that grant was that attached with it is that we have to develop and publish a safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of service plan, which is essentially another reopening plan. You can see how, as a federal requirement for many districts across the country that hadn't really reopened at this point, this is them doing the work that schools in Connecticut did last summer. So for us, it's about updating our plans including the newest guidance as far as expectations for next school year. But Maureen, to your point, there is a really specific reporting and accountability process connected to this, where we'll have to give those grant updates. And you know, my plan is that we'd include those, include the board on those updates as we're preparing them for this.
Are any percent of the grants conditioned upon appropriate approvals at stages? Or do you've received the monies and then you do a reserve and you have to give it back if something goes awry?
No, I don't think that that's how it's written, although we continue to get guidance. I think that, and one of the things that we've shared, given that this is a 2-year grant, that we could be working on something, and then if we decided to make a change to the grant based on the data that we're receiving in real time, or we decide to pivot to a different strategy, that there's flexibility that we could update those plans.
Okay, well, thank you for doing that work.
Thank you. All right, Clarence, Mr. Zachery, we'll come back to you now. Would you like me to share any of the materials out?
Yes, sir. If you could pull up the budget object summary, given the robust agenda, we'll try to get through it quickly so we can get on to some more
That would
meaty
be
discussions.
perfect. I appreciate that. Okay, is it? Can you see them?
I think you may need to increase the size
A little bit, yeah.
If anyone's having issues like I am, that's good enough right there, I think.
Okay.
So thank you. This is our report for April. Just refresh your memories on how we present it. The second column in from the left is what we budgeted for this year. Next column is what we spent month to date. That's all in April. Next column is year-to-date expenditures. That's be July through the end of April. Encumbered are things that we have encumbered. We know we're going to spend the money and we have a PO for it. The next column is anticipated expenditures, things where we haven't encumbered yet, but we fully expect to expend the money. And most of those you'll see will be salary related, but there's some additional ones that the staff at the building level share with us, so we included those. Last column, well, second to the last column will be the unexpended budget left over. And then the last column will be the expenditures over budget. If you scroll down, Mr. Chair, we'll get to the part most I know Mr. DiStefano wants to talk about is what is our unspent funds. So if you back out the anticipated expenditures of 3.8 million and change, it leaves you 155,000 and change. One thing, that number actually in reality will be slightly higher because we haven't credited for the grants. We have another 92,000 in grants. So right now my numbers are working about, we're expecting around 247,913 as unexpended funds at this date and time. That of course can change if something comes in that we're unaware about, but so we're showing the 155 on the operating, and we got a reimbursement from grants of another 92,503 that's coming. So I'll pause there, see if there's any questions.
Well, I know we have this on the agenda item for later for discussion. So
yeah,
if we move through the reports and then we can come back. So if anybody's got any questions on the object summary piece of it, not the unexpended, because we do have that for later. Okay, and let's move on to the next one.
All right, I think transfer report is be next, I think.
Yep, transfer.
Basic transfers, nothing, no real large dollar amounts. We made an adjustment in the new eFinance Plus system, and that far second to the right column that see description, before it was listing account numbers. So now we actually have some, as you notice at the top, they show the account numbers. We're going down below, we started adding actual verbiage, so you go to see what the to and from is. So you'll notice the change, the top has account numbers, whereas you go down, as the dates went on, we were able to put verbiage descriptions of what was needed. I think the grand total is around $7,000 in transfers for the month. If you scroll down to the bottom, sir, yep, 7,141. There's not really anything that jumps out of that. So I don't know if there's any questions, I can answer them, but given time is of essence.
Yep. Any questions from board members?
Well, just one question. When we say replace fitness equipment, is that fitness equipment that was budgeted to be replaced? And in the budget
It
last
was-
year, or is that fitness equipment that was replaced because we had unspent funds to replace the equipment?
It was fitness equipment that we thought we could repair and we can't repair it. So we are purchasing new equipment. We thought we could repair, I think it was a treadmill. That's where that transfer is.
Okay, we can have a discussion further on. Thank you.
To healthcare reports, sir, I think you're gonna have to rotate it so people can, there you go. This continues to be the bright shining light, and that our health claims continue to trend very well. If you scroll down to the bottom, sir, you a little bit lower, our year-to-date average is 143,065. It's slightly above our previous year, but as you can see, it is lower than our 3-year average. It's so far, Region 9 has been performing exceptionally well. The sort of noise we had January through March with the issue of Anthem has been fully worked out now. So you see April is at 125, which is basically in line with December at 124. So we're sort of, that nonsense with the system migration, the Anthem has fully worked its way out through the system. So we should end the year very well, barring any illnesses or claims that come up in May and June. And if there's any questions, I can address those, and otherwise I'll cede the rest of the time so we can get to the other things on the agenda.
All right, any questions? I think that's the last one. All right, seeing no questions, and thank you. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Zachery. And we'll move on to head of school report, item D. Dr. Penn.
Great, thank you. I wanted to just fill the board and the public in on some athletic information. Just because our athletes and our parents, our booster clubs, it's been, what a year it's been, right? We don't even have any words to describe the up and down and how difficult this has been, especially on our athletes and our students. Given all of that, we have 303 individual athletes that are participating in spring sports. They have been competing in a number of teams. We are this weekend, or I guess it was actually beginning Monday, we are now winding down the regular season and we're going into our tournament season. So we're so pleased with that. It's great to see the students come into school with their baseball gear and their tennis gear. And it's not just that our athletes are gifted athletes, some scouted, Matt Scott is being scouted right now as an 11th grader by the national baseball teams, several major league teams. It's also the incredible fundraising that our teams do to raise awareness for those around them. There's a breast cancer awareness. We often do that. Volleyball has that, and that's actually girls lacrosse, I'm sorry, right now that is doing that. Volleyball has that Dig Pink cancer awareness. Boys volleyball is focused on mental health and awareness. The boys lacrosse team right now is involved in a drive called Crutches for Kids. These are just the side benefits. We often talk about our athletic track record. And I'm just so pleased with the students. I know Mike would be here tooting the horn of his own athletes, Mike Santangeli, and he is involved in athletics as he often is. We see very little of him. We get a lot of text messages and he pops in and out of meetings, but it's really through the effort of Mike and his staff. A special congratulations to our own coach Tynan. He was just awarded last week as outstanding coach for 2021. And that's just a wonderful accomplishment. And we know our students wouldn't get there without that kind of leadership. So I just wanted to shine a little spotlight on our athletes. Many of our athletes are involved in our AP program. It was a nice transition, right, to AP testing. This is AP. I know Jen Damaris is on one of these screens somewhere. She is our AP test coordinator, and what a job she has done this year. AP tests actually began on May 5th, that first week of May. and they're going to continue right through June 11th. The advanced placement tests are very spread out this year. There was some flexibility from by our AP teachers in, are they going to have a digital exam? Are they going to have an in-person exam? And even some flexibility this year as to where that exam is going to take place in the calendar. If you recall, last year, all the exams were all online. That's not the case right now. So we are in the midst of AP exams, magnificently organized by Jen Damaris. I'll be speaking later on about some other items, so I just wanted to stop there. If there are specific questions that we can answer, or Jen can pop on and answer about the AP, we'll be glad to do that. And if not.
So when you say, is it your intent, Todd, to have a discussion now about course offerings, or did you want to do an agenda item and talk about it later?
Let's put it on later, because we've got a textbook that we need to approve, so we can put it on. So if you want to add it, I would put it under discussion of possible action instead of administrative reports. If you want to add the agenda item now, or we can wait till we get to discussion of possible action, but we do need to add an item.
Oh, okay. Just procedurally, we're aware that we can't approve the textbooks tonight. We have to approve them at the next meeting. Are we aware of that?
Based on what policy?
Based on state statute.
So do you mean double communication, like a policy, or because it wasn't on the agenda?
No, I think state statute says that you have to announce at a meeting that you're going to be approving textbooks at the next meeting, and then you can approve them at the next meeting. It's kind of like when you approve policy, but I'm pretty sure state statute, we've done that before, requires that you notice that you're going to make a change to textbooks at the meeting prior, and then you approve them at the next meeting. And I don't know if Dr. Harrison or Stephanie.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've
look
done a
that up,
textbook, so
I'm pretty confident that's what
I don't remember. It's been a while since we've done one.
That's indeed the same procedure that we've used for more recent textbook changes in the other two districts.
Will this be?
Is that codified in the policy, though? I have the policy up, and apologies if I missed it.
No, I think, as Mike said, it's in the statute.
It's state
Anyone know
statute.
the statutory reference? Do you know, Mike, or?
Well, if you go to CT 170, state statutes 170, there's a list of things for school
I'm
boards.
in 170. I just wanted to know if you knew.
Look at textbooks.
Section 10-229.
Thank you.
Am I correct, Dr. Harrison?
So Mike, I'm unfamiliar with it, but I'm reading it now.
Okay.
All right. So we'll hold the agenda item until later then. We'll answer that question. We'll hold the agenda item until later so we know exactly what to put on the agenda item. Any other questions then for Dr. Pitt? We'll move on. Okay. All right. Then next is item E, Director of Special Education, Mr. DiStefano. I made you a co-host. I didn't know if you wanted to share any of your reports or.
Perfect. No, I think we're good. I'll be rather brief, but I just wanted to start off, as I always do, with a special education staff member of the month. It really helps me reflect as a leader. Special education department moves so quickly. It seems like, September starts and before we know it, it's June. And it really lets me kind of sit back and think about staff. And one of those that I'm gonna talk about tonight is a really special one, Jonathan Rohde. We call him JD. And JD is he has one major flaw, and it's that there's only one of him. And when you have a really great special education teacher like JD, only having one of them, it makes it tricky. But JD does a great job. He case manages our 10th grade students. He is a co-teacher for 2 sections of co-taught geometry. And then he also serves the Joel Barlow community as the assistant coach for girls soccer, boys and girls indoor track, and girls outdoor track. couple other items. We did finish our 3-part parent series. We had a presentation 3 weeks in a row, one on DBT with Alec Miller for parents, one on anxiety with Dr. Ellie Leibowitz from the Yale Anxiety Program, and then one with Peg Dawson on executive functioning. 2 of those 3, the Alec Miller presentation and the executive functioning presentation, will be posted along with the handouts on the special education part of the Joel Barlow website. The Ellie Leibowitz anxiety presentation, I will be able to put up the handout, but I don't have a video for that. His preference is not to record those videos. We've also, combined that with presentations with our staff, and we've done presentations on DBT. We've completed 2 of the 4 trainings for our support staff. We've also done training around anxiety or executive functioning. And then next week, we have a presenter coming in, Marilyn Friend, who's a guru in the area of co-teaching, who's going to be working with some of our staff on co-teaching models. In terms of extended school year services, I actually have an error on that report. It's actually July 6th to July 30th. When I did that report, I forgot the observed holiday. So it's July 6th to July 30th from 8 to 12 at Joel Barlow High School. We are anticipating some of the work that's being done with the air conditioning unit. So Walter and I have worked on some backup plans for some portable AC units in the event that we run into an AC issue. I've been the principal of an ESY program when the AC unit broke in the middle of ESY, and it is not pleasant. So we will make sure we have a backup to that as we get ready for ESY this year. Okay. In terms of our referrals to special education in 504, Paula Panos and I worked on this over the last couple months, these graphs. And just to summarize them, as you know, there's been a significant increase in the amount of referrals to special education and referrals to 504 plans, primarily due to social emotional concerns around anxiety and depression, internalizing problems. And we did have, since our last board meeting, we did have 3 new referrals to special education, 3 new referrals to 504 plans. At the next Board of Ed meeting, I could get you a exact number of referrals to special education and 504, and which one, how many were determined eligible and how many were not. Let's see.
Great. Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Oh, great. And
any concerns with the numbers going up?
No, I think what we're seeing in terms of at Joel Barlow High School are very consistent with other districts in our area. Everyone is seeing an increase in the number of referrals and the number of 504 referrals. So the numbers are going up in many districts, and I think we've done a really good job of responding to them in a timely manner and supporting those students. In terms of our supports, our bridge support, our 3E program, and then our out of district placements, the numbers have remained steady. Same thing for next month. I could give you a final tally on the bridge referrals, our 3E program and out of districts. Obviously, we've done a really good job of, again, our parents, our students, that they love being part of the Joel Barlow community. So, when students need to be outplaced, they need to be outplaced. Generally, we do a good job of supporting our students in districts. So our numbers have stayed rather steady. But at the end of this, at the end of our next month, when I do my next board report, I can give you an update of our students who will require transition programs. So they'll be leaving Joel Barlow to go to a transition program. And then our incoming 8th grade students. So I'll be able to give you a more accurate number on our anticipated bridge 3E and out of district placements for September.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any questions? Oh, one thing I forgot to leave, I left out is we also did, I applied for a $20,000 grant through the state of Connecticut for special education, and that was approved. So we have $20,000 in grants coming in. What I wrote the grant around was, it's really about transitioning and supporting our students as we come back from COVID next year, making sure that we have supports for our students in place. And my idea was that we spend a lot of time with our special education teachers, our psychologists, our speech and language pathologists doing assessments. So I wrote the grant so we could get a lot of those assessments done early and even outside of the school day, so that our staff will be ready for students as they transition back. Mr. D'Agostino had asked a question at the last meeting about, are we prepared for, the students? Because I've been saying all year, my biggest concern is when COVID is over, are we going to be prepared for these students when they come back in September? And with the support of the board and now with the support of the state, we have the new social worker coming in, and we have a lot of training that has been approved. And now on top of that, we have this where we could ensure that our staff is with students during the day, and then the time that they generally would have had outside of being available for students doing assessments, doing the psychological, psychoeducational and academic and speech and language type testing. We'll be able to work on some of that outside of the school day, even into the summer this year.
Congratulations first on the grant, and on next month's report, could you just put a bullet in like where the grant was from, and then the specific areas that it's covering, just as a bullet in your report, because I didn't see it in this one. It'd be helpful for the board and the public. Cheryl, I saw your hand as well.
Yeah, is that an incremental grant, Mike, or would that be cost neutral, or would that be cost savings? And would it be the current budget year or next year budget year?
Could you repeat that one more time? Sorry, I lost you for a second.
So because we have the grant, right, would that be incremental costs that we would have had, but now it's neutral? Or would it have been, is this now an expected reduction in the actual cost because we have the grant?
It wouldn't be a reduction, because these are evaluations that we generally would have done during the school year. And it is a brand new grant. The state just released it to us about a month and a half ago, and we just got approval a few days ago. So I'm not sure how the funds are going to be dispersed, but these are it's really to help support and ensure that our staff is available for students. Some districts wrote it in different ways, but my idea was to take our staff that would have been, the first couple weeks of this school year. I'll tell you that our psychologists spent a lot of time doing psychological evaluations for students who maybe were unavailable during the COVID closure or during distance learning. And there are students that, when they come back in the building, we're going to have to spend some time catching up on some of the evaluations. We did a great job this year of many districts were behind in evaluations. We did a good job of keeping up with them, but there will be students who are going to be new back to the building where we're going to have to do some assessments. And this will be a way that we don't get overburdened with the assessments, making our psychologists, our special education teachers miss class time or miss time with directly with students, so that they could conduct those evaluations this summer or even outside of the school day.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, so I just wanted to dovetail on what Cheryl said, because it's a great point. And so, first of all, thank you, Mike, for your diligence to try and seek these grants, because that's much appreciated by our communities, the boards, and by the students to be looking for these types of opportunities. And I think that's great. But I think to Cheryl's point is, I'm sure Mr. Zachery can kind of advise you if you obtain the grant this year, how that works, whether it's got to be spent, expended in this fiscal year, or whether it can be carried over. And I assume it's like most of the COVID grants, it's supplement, not supplant. So if there's ways that you can get apparatus that would be beneficial in these assessments that you're looking to accelerate in the beginning of the next school year, you might think to purchase the apparatus this school year if you need to expend the funds this year, and then use your funding that you had in the budget to pay salaries that may occur next year. But I'm sure you guys are way smarter than me. You can figure that out. But it's a great question by Cheryl, and thank you for your efforts. I appreciate it.
Welcome. Thank you.
Again, thank you. And maybe just an update at the June meeting. We'll put it on in your administrative report.
Great. We'll do.
To answer some of those questions. But again, thank you. Thank you for the extra effort to get the grant money for us. We appreciate it. All right. We're going to have to move on halfway through the agenda. So we're down to item 7, Board of Education Committee report. So the first one is the building committee update, item A. Joe Barlow, HVAC and safety improvement project. So Mike, would you like to I have an update as an appointment for a member of the committee. I don't know if you want to start your update and then I can do that, or the other way around.
Yeah, so that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, I have I had the privilege of being elected the chair of the building committee for the JBHS HVAC and safety improvement project that we've all been working so hard on. And so, you know, we don't have any project updates, any, added information. We just have project updates in that we're continuing to have the plans drawn. We're continuing with the assessment of the buildings and gathering of the information to apply for the permits and all. We do have confirmation from manufacturers that our equipment is scheduled to be received on time. We don't see any issues completing the project within the timing guidelines that we had set out originally. And again, we plan to complete this project on time, on or under budget to the highest industry standards, as we always strive to do. And so, yeah, with that, I know that you have an appointment that you may want to mention.
Yes. So as the chair for the Region 9 board, I'm appointing Suzanne Crivet as the member of the public on the building committee. So she will be attending the meetings as a public member. She has served us very well in the past on past building campus improvement projects, knows the process very well, and is a neighbor in the Barlow area there, which is an added benefit. We had several very qualified people from the public volunteer and had some great conversations with people. So I appreciate all the community support and helping us with this project. So, and look forward to Suzanne serving on this project as well.
Right, and that's great. And so from there, I'd like to dovetail. I know you have committee reports, and we don't have the Facilities and Fields Committee listed, but we are under committee reports.
Yep.
So
I'll allow an agenda item here if you want.
I was going to say, I wonder if someone would like to add an agenda item to receive a committee report from the Facilities and Fields Committee.
Do we need a motion from Karen? Thank you.
Second.
And a second from
Cheryl.
Cheryl. Okay. All right. So all in favor of adding an agenda item for the Facilities and Fields Committee report as item B? We'll put it ahead of the DEI update. All right. Looks like it's all in favor. Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. So, and again, very, very briefly, we had a Facilities and Fields Committee meeting prior to the start of this meeting. We did discuss several items. Obviously the same HVAC safety improvement project update that I just articulated to the board, but there was also a conversation based on the review of the capital plan. Yep. And it became evident to us that there was an item on the capital plan that's listed in the 2020-2021 school year, which really we had discussions, previous discussions, and we have determined that it really should be put into the 2021-2022 fiscal year at a minimum, and then continue to have conversations based upon our willingness or the need to move forward with that. So given that, I'd like to make a motion and move that the Region 9 Board of Education approve the revision of the capital plan to move the air purification from the 2020-2021 to the 2021-2022 fiscal year and accept the draft as the approved capital plan.
So moved, Karen.
For your second. So Karen seconds.
Second, sorry.
No, it's fine.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on, we've got the plan up. If anybody has any questions on it. All right. Seeing no questions, then all in favor of the revised capital plan with the air purification moving to the 21-22 year? Aye. All right, and raise your hand. All right, so it passes unanimously. So we now have a new approved capital plan. And we'll get revisions done accordingly to it. So we have the plan in its current state. All right. Anything else from the Facilities and Fields Committee?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. And now we'll move on to the new item C then, ER9 DEI Task Force Inclusion Statement and Surveys from that committee. And I'll turn that over to Cheryl.
Todd, I'm going to share my screen. So
Yep.
you know
She
when-
need co-host to do that.
Oh. You should see a deck, right?
Yes. Yep, we can see it.
Present this, okay. Okay, so sorry. All right. I'm going to focus this update specifically with respect to Region 9's input. So that would be the high school surveys and the inclusion statement. So not going to spend a lot of time other than just to give everyone a visual depiction of what the task force has done to date, and just a refresher for those who may not be familiar in detail with the task force work. It's a committee that's comprised of representation from the 3 boards of education respectively, as well as members from the faculty and the administration. So everyone may recall last year, the tri-board and delegate created a task force, which then created a charge, which was unanimously approved. We went through a public application process, selection of task force members. We reviewed the framework, DEI scope, and the administration presented a 3-phase model. And in the upper right-hand side of this slide, the 3-phase model, which Stephanie mentioned earlier, review assets and challenges, develop a theory of action, and develop and implement a plan. And that's kind of the guiding principles in terms of timeline and how to move forward. And so in the summer through January, the task force discussed the surveys as well as small group conversations or focus groups. Now, at that point, that task force or focus groups was tabled for 2 primary reasons. One, making sure we have trained facilitators. And as Stephanie mentioned, there's already the Barlow High School focus groups that are being conducted as part of the equity audit, which I have outlined in the lower right-hand side of the slide. So ultimately, the task force decided to move forward with a survey, developing a survey, I should say. And that brings us to February, March 2021. And by the way, all of this information is publicly available through the minutes, meeting recordings, et cetera. That's just a summary of what happened. Multiple sources from organizations drove the survey, and those organizations had expertise in both education and survey design. Just a point of reference here, one of our task force members from representing the community has 25 years of survey experience, and in the survey incorporates edits from the board's attorneys, students, members of the public, the boards, and the task force. And then the task force did approve recommendations to the boards, which we'll discuss next week. In April, the task force developed an equity inclusion statement. Again, that statement went through multiple edit processes and was approved unanimously by the task force for recommendation to the board. And then here we are in May, the Region 9 review, and I've outlined other committees, but I don't want to spend a lot of time because those committees and board meetings will address accordingly. And then just one final thing to outline here is ongoing school-specific efforts, as mentioned, the Barlow efforts, and then there are other efforts that are occurring in the other schools. Okay, so the first item, if you can kind of match this up against the timeline I just presented, the draft equity inclusion statement. So I'm not going to read it, but I think the Region 9 board members have received this in advance and it's publicly available. Public has reviewed it as well, but I'll stop just to have folks take a look at it. And by the way, I want to just break for questions after this, and then we can go into the survey. I could toggle back. So and I could go back if the board members want to, I could toggle back to that slide, but just why do we have to have one? And can we just do surveys? And what's the difference from other statements from Region 9 or K-8 districts? And this was members, just for members of the public are aware, all the board members individually sent me questions, and these are questions that I'm answering specifically as it relates to Region 9 board members, so that people have an idea of the review that occurred from Region 9. But essentially the answers are, in terms of what the task force identified, provides overarching aspirations and belief in a shared ER9 statement, provides support to our students and for who may feel marginalized for any reason, and drives accountability specifically aligned with the task force charge. Remember, this is what was already pre-approved. And so the committee shall conduct an annual assessment, hold regularly scheduled meetings, establish annual multi-year goals, and then identify and recommend sources of funding for equity and diversity and inclusion initiatives. But with that, I'll, certainly if the board members have questions, I'm happy to answer any additional questions they have on the statement or comments.
So where would the statement, how would the statement be used? Is that something that, because I was thinking about that, does the DEI task force plan to have like a website or something that is part of, like a committee website or task force website where the statement will be, kind of like the mission statement, or is this something that will be posted by all the boards on a district website, or is this something that we want to include with many other publications at Region 9? In other words, so what was the the thought process and how it was going to be used from the task force?
I think I'll invite Dr. Harris and Dr. Pierson to comment as well, but the task force did discuss that, yes, all of the above essentially. So there will be some communication. There is an intent to develop a website that would be linked from the region, from the ER9 website. So for the joint, if everyone er9.org, there is that all of the resources that the committee charge, the committee minutes, recordings of the minutes are already on the ER9 website available to the public, so that those efforts to communicate would then be expanded via a special website that would link off of where we currently have it on the er9.org website. But it's part of, I think, the overall communication, but Rydell, please comment.
Sure. So, so Cheryl, to that point about the website, I mean, I think that you hit the needle on the head, or hit the nail on the head, whatever it is, that there would be a DEI website, and I could really see this statement kind of at the top of the website. But just the practicality of it, I see it so when we talk about the ABCs, anytime we have those statements where it's academic excellence, building a caring community, future focus learning, or focus on future ready learners. And I see this, I could see this equity and inclusion statement being right along with those other three, just as kind of to help be sort of an aspirational guide of what we're always trying to achieve. And so the components of the statement, just like the components of those ABCs, live in other places within policy, within practices, in mission statements, but it's nice to have kind of those guiding, enduring aspirational goals kind of all laid out in front of us.
At the high school only, so in our district, is this intended to replace anything that we have in place already, or is this inclusion statement to be in addition?
I don't see it replacing anything. Yeah, I think it's Todd, I think it's just in addition to.
And then has the Barlow, I don't know what our DEI committee, have they reviewed this statement? And that's to
so
Dr. Pierson Ugol.
They did some work with us on the front end as far as, so when we were having the conversation earlier, you know, can't they, would they just give us a checklist of these are all the things that you should do? So while they didn't give us a checklist like that, having an equity and inclusion statement was one of the top things that they said it's important for us as a district to make sure that we have kind of as a guiding aspirational goal, as a guiding principle. So when the DEI task force initially reviewed some of the, we reviewed a number of equity statements from districts across the state and other districts outside of the state. Some of those that we looked at were ones that they recommended to us as, you know, these are some that you could also look at. So they've done, as consultants, they've done that work with districts in developing that statement. And so they, Todd, to the easy answer to your question, they didn't review what we have, but we talked with them about the components of the equity and inclusion statement and the importance of having one.
Okay, and then I guess a follow-up to that, if one of their goals was to have a statement, do we know if they're going to adopt this statement or create another statement? So I'm just, again, trying to look at alignment that we don't have multiple statements to cause confusion.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't be working to create a new statement. And their recommendations was that as a tri-district that we have one. And so once Dr. Pierson, Ugol, and I shared that this was work that we were going to be doing with the DEI task force, then it was clear that that wasn't work that they needed to do just in relationship to the high school.
And it's common practice and it's typical. And so part of what the task force did look at are other example statements from other districts who have embarked on this work in Connecticut and outside of Connecticut. So we did have a fair amount of review and discussion of what words or what particularly resonates to our student bodies, as well as our staff and whoever's on the task force, their parents.
And then I've got, did the consultant that we paid for review the statement for us in the district and incorporate it into their plan and approach for us, for our committee? I asked this because I haven't sat in on any of the Barlow diversity meetings, so I don't know what goes on in there. So have they looked at this, the consultant?
We have not, as an advisory committee, looked at this statement. It hasn't yet been approved by the tri-district. So I would imagine after that is, that goes through that process in May that Cheryl outlined, then it would be something that the advisory committee would look at and be sure that those action steps that Stephanie spoke about and I spoke about earlier tie back to the intent and the spirit of that statement.
And sorry, share with the Sharon. I can't see all the other panels, so I don't know if other board members have their hand up or questions.
Let me check. Let's see.
Can't see everybody.
I can't see either because I'm sharing.
Yeah, if you stop the share and then you can share again.
All right, let me do that.
I don't want to dominate all the questions as others.
Yeah, no. That's better. Good idea.
I can't see anybody. I can just keep asking questions, but like others, if they've got any questions. No, I take it down. If nobody's got any questions, you'll have to bring it back up again for the survey.
It's okay.
So I just have a question, and again, I don't know whether it's relevant. It's basically a mission statement. So there's no there's nothing binding in there. I guess what I'm wondering is, look, I understand we have attorneys that are on the boards and everything, but I just wondering, does legal counsel need to just glance and make sure it's fine, or there's nothing binding in there that there's any anything that we're obligated to based on the mission statement?
So Todd, Mike, my thoughts on that is it's really not anything binding there. I mean, I think that the purpose of it as an aspirational goal is this is something that we're always working towards. And so it's not sort of tying our hands at any level.
That's fine. I'm fine with it. I just want to, ask the question just in case, can someone say, well, you said this, but you're not doing that, so I just, that's the only reason for the question, but I trust that you guys have looked at that and stuff, so.
I think, Mike, there's
Right, go
normally
ahead.
thought of as a progression of aspirational statements, policy, and regulation. And this is clearly in the framework of an aspirational statement.
Great, thank you. It's helpful.
All right, and so again, we don't need any motion on this. This is on the agenda for the joint board meeting next week on the 25th. Just for the Region 9 board members for any questions that we have before going into the joint board meeting to hopefully keep that meeting shorter.
Have you ever been to a tri-board meeting?
We're trying.
All right, Cheryl, do you have
I'll share again.
the survey if you want to share that one?
Sure. All right, let me see. Okay, pull that off. All right, y'all see that?
It's loading up again.
Yep.
Okay, we're
Okay.
good.
All right, so surveys, again, just visualize the timeline that I talked about earlier. These are just additional process points. Again, these are all codified in the minutes, all publicly available. Survey length modified and tested takes about 10 minutes to complete. It does protect students and respondents' privacy. Students, particularly for the younger grades, can opt out of the survey or skip questions. The task force decided to limit student surveys to grades 6 through 12 in response to many of the comments we received from the public, and I think also from some task force members. Simplified questions and terminology. And then just to give a flavor here, I'm not going to read every single bullet point, but just to give you a flavor of the number of comments and who participated in those meetings, and in terms of the nature, the qualitative nature of some of the comments. I think there were many personal experiences of ER9 students specifically, or their parents speaking on their students' behalf, of having experiences where they felt bullied, felt marginalized, or not included due to specifically sexual orientation, race, and religion. Those are the specific comments that were cited. But again, this just gives you a flavor of some of what we received from the public, and many of which we responded to real time. We kind of inserted public sessions in while we were drafting comments. So just to give the board a flavor of the process. And then I did receive, again, thank you for the, wanted to focus again, like I said, on high school parent and staff surveys, any comments that the boards may have for middle school, which we should, recommending that they be tabled appropriately at the tri-board meeting. But I did have specific questions from our Region 9 board on the high school student survey. And one of it is, how is this different from the climate survey data? The climate survey is statutorily mandated, and the timing is already established. I think it was actually already completed. Well, my own kids, I think, answered the climate survey already. Manage the length of both surveys, and really to provide focused baseline data, more cross-referencing than what the climate survey has. And then it's really the baseline metric to provide and measure progress over time. As Stephanie and Rydell have already outlined, this is not a check the box and it's done. This is something that will take time and should have some kind of progress, like anything in education. But other specific questions that Region 9 members had with respect to question 14, 34, 35, 36. One member recommended offer classroom as an option. I think I could pivot to the questions if people would like, but I just wanted to really share with the board members what questions we do have. And then I'll stop there if there are any other comments, and I'm happy to, like I said, to share the survey if you want me to bring that up on the screen. I'll stop in case people have any comments.
All right, questions for any of the board members? And again, we'll have this again on the 25th as well, so we don't need to do any motions tonight.
Yep.
Mike?
Yeah, so I just, again, I hate to always be the procedure guy, the process guy, but it is important. So I just want to make sure, given the type of survey, is that I know I heard mention that many of the questions were based on questions or advice from the GLSEN group, GLSN. Is that correct?
Let me share, if you can indulge me, I'll share again. Okay. Okay, so this is a slide that's later on. These are all the survey sources that the task force consulted, and just give a little bit of color. There was a working group within the task force. The working group brought it back to the task force. The task force deliberated the specific questions. I mean, we went through, oh, question 25 said this, let's do that, let's change that. Then we had public comment. But these are the list of sources. So as you can see, there are multiple sources. One of them is GLSEN, which is an educational organization from what I understand. But there are other surveys here. The board can read them appropriately. And again, these are basic sources. The survey was then tailored by the task force respectively, as it specifically relates to our districts.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. I just want to be careful because we've had these conversations on surveys in the past. And I know that if you look up our survey policy and there's a form and PPRA and all that. And I think it does state that if there's anything that's funded or partially funded by the U.S. Department of Education, which I think is linked with GLSEN, that it has to be administered as an opt-in rather than an opt-out. And there's a form on our survey thing about that. And there's also stuff on our policy that says that we need to alert parents the beginning of the school year about these surveys. I just want to make sure that we're doing this the right. I don't want this to cause any troubles moving forward. I just want to make sure, and so I'm sure you've all looked at that and everything. I just wanted to point that out so that we're in full compliance with our policies and with whatever requirements may be statutorial. So.
Yeah, just so great points, Mike. Yeah, we did vet this with the board's attorneys, and there were changes as a result of that. And there is the opt-in, opt-out, parental permission, ability to withdraw their students from the ability, the right to look at the survey and review it ahead of time. So yes, we did vet that, but I just wanted to re-communicate that. So it's
okay. And just make sure the policies align, that all the boards have the same survey policies and everything. Just I would just again cross our T's and make sure.
Joe, remind me how we're planning to deliver this, because we're using opt-in, opt-out. So is this like some of the other climate surveys? It's going to get blasted out. People can then click on the link, choose to take the survey or not take it, or is it a mandatory thing that they can drop down to the questions? So what's the delivery mechanism? Because we're using opt-in, opt-out, and I want to avoid confusion for the public.
I would presume it would be similar to climate survey, but I would ask Dr. Harris and Dr. Pierson to talk about the specific process if they can.
Yeah, it's opt-in only. The parents may opt out on behalf of their children, and students and staff will be able to opt in as they choose. So it's not.
So can you describe it again? How, is it getting delivered for the student version? Is it getting delivered to their email, or is it going to the parents? They can come in.
Right. So since our high school students do have email accounts, the logistics of the delivery have not actually been discussed. But if the students take the survey, they have the opportunity to take the survey at school. It would be done during a non-core academic time. It would be, say, during advisory time. And again, if they choose to take the survey, it is only opt-in. If the parents opt out on behalf of their child, then the student simply doesn't see the survey. The student doesn't participate.
So I just, again, so I'm clear on it. So if it's going to go to the student's email and the parents get an email on it, and the parent, which is a different email address, and the parents say, I don't want my kid to take it, then are we not delivering
Then-
it to the
Then
kids'
the
email?
student wouldn't get it. So the parents will get it first, right? So the parents have the final say and whether their students will ever see the survey. And if a parent says, in fact, yes, I want my student to take the survey, then that set of students will receive the survey and will be invited to participate.
Okay.
And they can participate and answer one question or all of the questions or a set of the questions. The survey is constructed in a manner that allows students to participate in across the full range.
Okay, so if they're in it and they don't know the answer or not comfortable, they can skip a question. It's not a mandatory to advance through kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And that's helpful. And again, I have no objection to the survey. I support the survey. I just want to make sure that we're, because there seems some ambiguity whether it was opt-in or opt-out, but it basically, the email goes to the parent. They have to opt in. They have to say, we want our child to take it, or they have to say that, we want to take whatever. Because I'm trying to understand, because opt-in means that you have to say, yes, I want to take it. Opt-out means I receive it and then I have to say, I don't want to take it. So I just want to make sure that we're very clear, that everyone understands what we're doing, and that we're, in compliance, because
Yeah, and particularly since the high school students have their own email accounts as well, right?
Sure.
Other questions? I have a question. Who gets the data coming back from the survey?
So that data will come back to administration, and so administration will see it disaggregated, and then report back to the task force and then to the boards on the themes of the results. But given that, as with all of our surveys, even though they're not identifiable, if students are sharing information or sharing experiences and including students' names, we just want to be really conscious that we are maintaining our student privacy. And so only administration will see the raw data.
Right.
And then again, for the high school, since we've got our own DEI committee, then will they have access to the raw data as well, or to the filtered data?
Not to the raw data, because the committee is made up of parents and students as well as staff members. Only administrators will see the raw data. They will, once we have an opportunity to do our analysis, then we will pull out the salient information, most likely removing the open-ended questions, and then bring it back to both the Barlow committee and the DEI task force.
Okay. And most of it it's anonymous anyway. So, but you don't want anything that's identifiable, which is great. And so, no, I appreciate the work of the task force and everyone involved putting together the survey. I don't see any issues with collecting data. I think that's can only be helpful. So, like I said, I don't want my questions to be misinterpreted as a way of trying to obstruct this moving forward. I just wanted to make sure that we were all aware. And again, it sounds like it's being done in a very thoughtful way. The administration is going to disaggregate everything, and that it will go back to the task force. And again, it's anonymous and it's data. So again, I appreciate your efforts. So thank you.
And just one other question on the teacher survey. How's that going to be distributed? And is it the same mechanism for the data as well?
Similar in that the teachers will receive a link through their ER9 email account, and they will choose to participate in completing the survey or not.
Okay, and the data is the same. The raw data is not going anywhere besides the administration. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Karen?
Do you think that with people going to people's personal, emails, that they'll worry that somehow the survey information they give out can be linked back to them in some way? Do you think that'll be a concern that they have?
Are you asking about staff or parents or students?
Anyone, actually anyone, because a lot of it's very private, personal information with regard to, sexual orientation, bullying, there's a million things on there.
Sure. So it will provide only a link to the survey, but we can certainly remind all potential survey takers of the anonymous nature of the survey and the fact that we're not collecting any information in any manner.
And then, sorry, just one other for clarification. I think it was asked in one of the task force meetings, but if there's, if anything in the free text fields is identifiable for any particular, either for the person or for anybody that they might accuse of bullying or something like that, do we have an obligation as a board then to act on it? And I think we talked about this once at the committee meeting, but just for clarity for the other board members that weren't there.
Sure. Well, when we receive information that includes any form of a bullying report, then we do absolutely have a responsibility to act on that and conduct an investigation to the extent that that would be possible without identifying information. So certainly with the administrative review of the results, we would proceed accordingly.
I think that was the same answer that was at the task force, but just make sure everybody that wasn't there understood as well. Okay, any other questions? Cheryl, any other?
Nope, that's
items? So all this will be up again on the 25th in the joint board meeting, and we'll have more discussion there and motions at that meeting.
Just thank you, Cheryl, for presenting that, because it was very helpful to be able to see that in advance and answer the questions now, so that the public is aware and that board members are informed. So that's helpful. Thank you.
And I'm glad to, if there are any questions after the fact, feel free to either send them directly to the task force or I'm happy to forward it on Region 9's behalf.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay. All right, moving on the agenda. Now we're into discussion and possible action at almost 10. So as we move into these items, a lot of these are short items. And so I would ask everybody to be brief in some of the comments around these. I don't think there's anything too controversial in here. So we'll see as we get into them, but I think a lot of short updates would be good if we can do that and move through the items, because we've got 5 and we're adding another item, it sounds like. Potentially. So before we get started, did we get the answer on the statute for the textbook? If we need to put it on first reading here, or
I do think that Mike is right. I read it.
Okay, so we do need to add an agenda item for that, so we can officially put it on to.
Yes, so we can announce that we're going to be, yes.
So I think that maybe Cheryl can just announce the name of the textbook, the edition, the author, and we can move on.
Yep. Do I have to?
No,
add an agenda item.
Agenda item for it first, and then we can do that. Yeah. So I'll take a motion to add it somewhere in the 5. Pick your place. And
so moved.
So we're adding an agenda item to announce possible textbook replacement and discussion of course offerings. Is that okay? That's what we had discussed in the beginning.
I was just doing it for the textbook purpose.
No. I can do a separate one too. It's fine. It doesn't. It's a question more than.
I'm okay putting together.
Either one. I don't.
So who's making that motion?
Maureen has a motion on the floor. If we want, if she wants, we can just vote on that, and then we can add.
So possible textbook replacement, adding that.
Yes.
All right, that's all right. So for the possible textbook replacement, adding that as an agenda item, let's just make it A. We'll bump everything down. So as item A, we need a second.
Second,
Karen.
Karen.
Second, Karen, thank you. All right, all in favor, other discussion, all in favor? Good, all right, so that's the new item A.
Mhm.
And Mike, were you going to add another agenda item?
Yeah, I'd like to add an agenda item to discuss course offerings for the 2021-2022 school year.
And is it a short discussion on course offerings? It
Yes,
sounds like a
I
very
think-
open-ended discussion.
I'm hoping it is, yes.
Mike, is there something specific about course offerings that we'll be discussing in the interest of keeping the agenda sort of tight?
Yes. But we have to have the agenda item before I can talk about it.
All right, we'll add it on, and then we may table it if it becomes an open-ended, since we have a lot of items. So let's add it on. All right. So you have a motion to add agenda item. Where do you want it in here?
It's you're the chair. You can put it wherever you want.
All right, then I'm gonna move it down. I'll put it as item F at the, or sorry, the new, gotta read number. Let's see, 1 second. It'll be the new item G. So item G, to review course offerings for 2021, 2020, 2021, or was it 21, 22?
Next year,
Year you're looking for?
2021, 2022.
21, 22. Thank you. Okay.
Too late to add courses this year, Todd, I think.
I think so. That's why I was making sure before I get the motion wrong. All right. Do I have a second on that?
Second, Karen.
Second, Karen. All right. Any discussion? Good. All in favor? Anyone? All right. I'm looking at hands. That's unanimous. Okay. So that is the new item G. All right. So let's start at the top of the stack here and move our way through efficiently if we can, please. So item 7, discussion possible action. The new item A was on the possible textbook replacement. I think it was in chemistry. So Cheryl, do you have the name of the
Yeah,
that
so
book?
it's the hold on a second, I lost it. Introductory Chemistry 6th edition.
And is there someplace we can find more info on it?
Yes, I can either share my screen, I have an outline, or I could share since it's just the first review, I could just share that with the board. It's already been shared.
It's first review, so maybe share it to the board after, and then we can read it at our leisure and come back on the June meeting.
Okay, and then for context, this was formally approved or to recommend to approve to the Board of Ed by the curriculum committee, which we held our meeting on Friday. So.
Okay. All right. So any other questions on that?
No, we don't need to vote to approve first reading or whatever. It's just announcing it now so that we can vote on it in a week or the next meeting.
Yeah, so we'll hold it to the next meeting. We'll get information. So if people want to look up the textbook or look at it, you know, some board members in the past like to read the entire textbook before they make a decision. So
it's
leave
just
that up to you. Cheryl got it. She can pass it around to the other board members if people want it.
There are 4 of us that read these that actually have the textbook. So I'm going to send this back to the school. I think we only have 4 copies, so that
I have a copy too, Joe.
They can work with the office to pick it up.
Excellent. Do you have Cliff Notes, or did you take notes that we could review?
Yes, in the outline we have,
process.
which I'll share. It's Cliff Notes, definitely.
Excellent. Thank you.
Suffice it to say, it's a very readable, common sense chemistry textbook.
It was excellent. Very good.
Okay. All right, good. Oh, well,
And I returned my copy, Gina, already.
Well, if you don't return it, you lose your parking.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
You have to park.
There's a fee at the end of the year. All right, well, half the board's read it already, so that's good. So the only half of us have homework to do. All right, we'll move on then, if nothing else on that item. So we're now on to item B, which is the new item B, end of year updates, graduation, parking fees, and final day. So Dr. Finn, I'll turn it over to you for a brief update on a few items that the public have been asking about with recent changes.
Wonderful. So the graduation, I don't have too much of an update here. We are still at a minimum, each graduate will have 2 guests, 2 guest tickets. As our guidelines change, if we could get more people into graduation, that is certainly our goal. So we know we can get 2 guests per graduate. And we are meeting as a committee next week after we hear some new guidelines. If we don't have to distance, if we could open up the visitor bleachers, we will certainly be looking at adding more guests to our ceremony. I think when I presented last, we had announced graduation is going to be on that last student day, which is on June 16th. It's a Wednesday. That's our last day of underclass exams. And the ceremony will begin at 6 p.m. Max already assured us earlier that it's not going to rain on June 16th. We're going to hold him to that. If it does, the rain date is at 6 p.m. on June 17th. And just because it's 2021, if it rains on June 17th, we are then going to have the ceremony inside on Friday, June 18th, I think we'd be on. And if we move inside, we're looking at two different ceremonies. It'll be the same ceremony twice. We'll split the class in half so we can still have guests at the ceremony. The reason we wouldn't be able to do an outdoor graduation on Friday is because we lose the stage that we're renting. We can only have the stage Tuesday to set up, Wednesday for the ceremony, Thursday if it's a rain date. And so Friday we'd need a totally different plan. And right now that's what we're looking at for a plan. Regardless of how many tickets people get at graduation, we will be live streaming graduation through so people could sit in their air-conditioned comfort of their own home and get a very good view. It will be broadcast using the press box. The sound system in the stadium is excellent. So we anticipate that will be a nice alternative. There'll be no charge for streaming that ceremony or anything like that. And so that's the plan at the moment for graduation. And as we get closer, we will, or as we get those finalized guidelines as far as how many people we can put in the stands, that will determine whether we can have more than 2 guests per graduate. So that's graduation.
I just have
I was just had a couple of questions just quickly. Yep. Sorry, go ahead, Mike. We probably have the same question.
Well, no, I might have missed it. A time, we said the 16th to 17th and then the 18th. Time of day for each is the same or is it different?
If we go to Friday, we'll change the time. The 16th and 17th will be 6 p.m. If we have to do a rain date, because we'll need 2 ceremonies, we'll need to tweak those times a little bit because we can't start at 6. We'll be there all night. So we'd probably have to start earlier if we have to move inside on Friday.
Okay. And then as far as you said, live streaming, will it also be on YouTube or something that it can be replayed, or is it just one-time live stream done and one and done?
We'd like to capture it. Right now, Mike Santangeli is looking into the same streaming that streams our sporting events. And they can stream, they're looking at streaming all of the high school graduations because every town in our area is going through the exact same situation. So you wouldn't need to, which is why I said there's not an expense. You wouldn't need to log on to a service. If we can do this on streaming it over YouTube, we certainly will look at every mode that we can do that. We'd love to capture it on video and we'll do that as well. So people could see it again and again.
That's great. And then last, the board members are invited. And as in past years, hopefully we can all attend. It's usually a nice gesture for us to be there to support our graduates. So again, obviously some may have work obligations or things that preclude it, but it's something that we try to make every effort if we can get there.
And along those same lines, we'll get instructions per usual for board members on where we need to be, what time, all that kind of stuff
Where
as
to
things
park,
get
you'll get a
finalized.
special parking place and where to be and when to be there, definitely.
Okay. And then is there anything that you need the board approval or any assistance or any other volunteers? Again, the board is willing to help in all capacities in the modified graduation version. So there's
You
anything
can
you
collect
think
the
of,
tickets from people as they
I'd
as
be
they
happy to
come
do
in
that.
and barter for tickets. I think we're okay at this point, but thank you very much for your help. We have had a few expenses that we've had to cover. Looking at, and so I don't have that final report yet when all is said and done, but we have purchased a turf protector to go over the turf so that we can put the stage and the chairs safely on the turf. We have the sound system is excellent, so we don't have to worry about that. And some of the expenses will be the same, like our pipers will still be there. The bagpipers will walk us in. So when we finish with those expenses, we'll come back and do that. But
Okay.
we're working very closely with Clarence to make sure that we are okay with our expenses.
Yeah, and if there isn't anything, or you need outreach for donations,
Thank you.
cash or other items, please let board members know. We're always happy to help.
Thank you.
Especially when we're making things a little different from the usual. So there's a lot of unusual things that pop up that we're willing to help out with. So do let us know. And
Keeping with
I'll
the
help take
theme of-
tickets. Or I got 4 kids I'll send out, or 3. One's
There
going to
you go.
graduate, so I'll put them out for tickets.
Keeping with the theme of our very unusual year.
Exactly.
We
Anything
had a
else
lot
on?
of people volunteer to photograph professional photographers and videographers last year. So if you need me to reach out to anybody, I will.
Thank you. We're actually contracted with Life Touch this year. They take our formal graduation pictures. But I know that there are plenty of photographers that will be around, and we're anticipating a beautiful day. And so we'll be able to take pictures before, during, and after.
Excellent. All right, a couple more items quickly. Parking, and I
Our
think you covered
parking
final day,
fees,
but
right. So our parking fees, this is just to let the board know. I know we worked with Todd on this, but we had a request from some students that were looking to purchase a parking pass for less than 30 days to have a reduced parking fee. And so we were able to offer that parking fee for $35. And it really is in our best interest to have the students be able to drive to school, and especially when you start looking at things like their AP exams or their final exams. So it could necessitate the need to open the lower parking lot, especially as our cohort C numbers drop and more students are in person. And if we open the lower lots, that shouldn't be a problem. Students on its nice days, they walk up the path, and that's not a concern. So this was really just to let the board know that if they hear of reduced parking, this is COVID time, so we don't anticipate next year having students ask us for reduced parking because of school being in session or not in session. We anticipate going back to our normal parking fee that the board had set, which is $150 parking permit fee for the year. And students
the
are
board
always
just-
welcome to take the bus.
yeah, exactly. And as a reminder, the board did approve in one of our earlier meetings, I think January 1, about the reduced parking fees with COVID. So
Right.
Is that the fee that the board approved, the $35?
we approved a reduced amount. I don't think the amount was specified in the motion, because depending on when the student would request it at the end of the year.
So we did a half amount, and then
Yep.
we normally in the last month of school, especially our juniors who are getting their licenses, we've reduced. And so we weren't going to do that, but it's been a very tough year on our students and our families. So for the dozen or so students that are looking to park again, and we thought that was important. It's also a big boost for our students who really look forward to being able to drive to campus. Our final day is our final day. It's actually going to happen. It will be June 16th, which is the final school day for students. That will wind up our underclass exams. Our staff, of course, comes back to school on June 17th. That's their final staff day. So they work one more day in the school year.
Thank you. And again, just that was a reminder, since we've had telecommuting days, remote learning days, snow days, where do we actually end the year? So thank you. reminder for that. All right, any other questions on that? We'll move on then to discussion possible action item, the new one C, which is practices related to residency requirements for currently enrolled students and tuition payment schedules. So, Mr. Zachery, do you want to tee this one up, or I can, and you can?
Sure, I can tee it up, sir. We have an issue in Region 9 and in the other two districts where, as most of you are aware, the real estate market is overheating in Easton and Reading, and we have current families who either sold their house and anticipate to be able to purchase another one and are being, outbid and haven't been able to find a home, or they're renting and their landlords have told them that landlord intends to sell the house and have to be out by July 1. So for the Region 9 purposes, we have a couple of families where students are rising seniors and have been at Joe Barlow for 3 years. And if they aren't able to find accommodations in Easton or Reading before school starts, they're somewhat in a bind based on how our policies are written. So this was brought to the board's attention to figure out if we can make some policy adjustments to let the administration, central office administration, the school administration figure out a way to let these students to stay enrolled at Joe Barlow to finish up their high school careers. And this is also, like I said, happening in the Easton district and the Reading district, but not obviously at the high school level.
Yeah, and so we have a policy, it's 5111, I believe, that outlines residency requirements and also tuition payments for residents, non-residents, pending residents, and I think there's a 90-day period on it. So we have a policy in place around it. I think the question that is out there is if the board would like to change the policy, which I don't think we're looking for that, or procedure, or provide some latitude to the policy. But right now we have some policies covering this situation that, as Mr. Zachery mentioned, is in a couple of situations it is not working out for people, and people have asked their requests. So we need to be able to provide some guidance as the board.
How many students are affected, or do we have a forecast as to that?
In total of the 3 districts, I'm dealing with 8 families. Joe Barlow Pacific, I think it's 2 to 3.
Okay. And the 2 to 3 are rising seniors?
That's
2
been
of them
our-
are, for sure. And the third one, I need to confirm.
So our practice in the past has been if they were the parents of a rising senior and they were residents of Reading or Easton as of July 1, those seniors were able to finish their year at Barlow. That has not been reflected in a policy as Mr. Zachery is pointing out. It's just been what we have done in the past. And right now we have 2 to 3 families who are asking that same request of central office.
And the problem with that previous practice, it was effective as July 1, and they have to be out of their current residences by June 30th. So that 1 day, 24 hours, if we were to continue that practice, it still wouldn't be available to them unless they find accommodations prior to that time. But they've been looking, so it's like I said, I'm dealing with this about 8 to 9 different families across the 3 districts, and it's been a problem that's been going on since last fall, and it doesn't seem to have any end in sight in reference to a solution. So we're looking for some latitude to figure out how to be accommodating to these families while respecting our individual policies for the 3 districts.
And what is the procedure for charging them tuition? Can you clarify that?
Right now, it's a 50% in September and 50%, I believe, in December.
Yes.
So
50% of what?
Of the tuition, which is $20,000+.
Okay.
So if you can imagine, if you're looking to put a down payment on a home or rent a place, and the district says I need 10 grand in August, September, and you're also trying to look for a place to live, that's a large financial outlay. So one of the things we discussed was amortizing that over a certain month, so to limit that sort of financial burden up front to have the students be able to stay in school.
And are these families indicating a willingness to actually pay that tuition dollar?
We haven't gotten there because I didn't want to promise them what the options would be until we had the discussion. So that's it. I told them there'd probably be tuition involved. How much upfront, I couldn't say because they hadn't had the discussion, because the policy clearly says 50%, at the start of the year and 50% midway through the year.
Yeah, it is clearly spelled out in the policy in one of the subsections.
And we do know, we have heard back from some families that they would not be in a position to pay that tuition.
Mike, I think I see your hand.
Yeah. So again, I don't think it's effective for us to look to change the policy right now, because that would take multiple meetings, and that would and I don't know that there's a need to change the policy, right? We're talking about practices relating to the policy.
Yes,
right?
that's what I'm looking for, because I
so
think by the time we get through a policy change, as you're stating, it will be probably too late for
it's
these families.
too late.
Yeah.
So I'll take a swing at this, okay? I'll make a motion and move that the Region 9 Board of Education grant the administration discretion to determine compliance of Board Policy 5111A related to residency status for students currently enrolled in Joe Barlow High School, and for setting an incremental schedule for invoicing any tuition payments due to the district. Does that work?
Mr. D, could I ask a possible edit? I
Sure.
think we have one family that currently has an 8th grader who's planning to come to Joe Barlow's. I don't know if you want to include that or not, but it's just, there's that element there that they are finishing up with the hope and intention to be at Joe Barlow, but you may want to discount that.
Okay, so if I edit it to say currently enrolled in the ER9 school district.
That would do it.
Could I ask a question? Then are we saying that we will accept any student? So the practice has been only for rising seniors.
No. Forget
The policy is for rising seniors, right?
Well, the practice is different than the policy. Okay, so let's not discuss the practice at this point, because this motion gives you discretion for your practice, right? But basically what we're saying is that we're granting the administration discretion to determine the compliance with the board policy 5111A related to the residency status for students currently enrolled in the ER9 school district, and for setting an incremental schedule for invoicing any tuition payments due to the district. So that gives you the discretion to determine the residency status. Again, we're designating for students who are currently enrolled in one of the districts in ER9, and for setting an incremental schedule for invoicing those tuition payments, which again, I think, again, from my perspective, is a family who says we're going to buy a house, but ends up next June not buying a house. I think we have to enforce our policy where we collect the tuition. However, we don't want to excessively burden, our families who are actively trying to acquire housing. And so we make them pay a large tuition payment up front, or, right away, that then we have to reimburse it. So I think the motion gives you discretion for setting that incremental schedule. But so that's my motion. That's a swing at the motion. I don't know if that works, but
It'd work for me, Mr. D'Agostino.
All right, so we have a motion. Does anybody need it repeated? We have.
Mike, have you thought about whether or not there are any state statutes that might contravene such a motion? And I haven't. So
no, but the motion just is not changing the policy.
Mhm.
It's giving them discretion to determine compliance of the policy.
But in that compliance, are they not determining residency, which isn't, and I'm questioning whether or not residency might not be a creature of statute. I'm not trying to get in the way as a matter of execution of your idea, because I support it.
Right.
I'm trying to make sure that we're not misstepping in doing it.
So
If you have a suggestion that's better, I'm here.
I'm listening to Dr. Harrison right now, so.
To your point, residency is established. There's statutory language around establishing residency. I don't think that Mike's motion changes that because his motion is tied more specifically to the collection of tuition, which is the will of the specific board. And there's nothing statutory related to that part of the policy. So I think that we are still in good shape here.
I'd like to then see the motion refined to say that the discretion is given to the administration to determine the propriety of or the efficacy of determinations related to tuition rather than residency in that language. I just think it would be a safer way to effectuate the same result.
Okay, and again, I'm happy to amend it. I guess my question would be, you're setting an incremental schedule for tuition, and you're assessing that to students who currently may not live in the district, which we don't have a policy that allows us to accept tuition paying students from outside of the district. So that was why I kind of was trying to incorporate them together.
So Mike, that policy that you're referencing, 5111A, it actually does allow for non-resident students paid tuition.
Who are children of teachers or staff, right?
It doesn't specify.
It
does not?
It does not.
Mike, I think it used to be covered in some of the bargaining union language, but it wasn't actually in the policy. So I think you're referring to.
Yeah, it did.
Look, I'm just trying to create a motion that alleviates the issue. So again, I accept Maureen's clarification, or however you want to.
Can we have a restatement of the motion just to make sure we're all clear? I know it may be difficult, but if so, can you restate?
Maureen would have to restate her part.
Well, Mike, why don't you start by stating it, and then I can try to amend it or put it up. Or put the
okay, so I move that the Region 9 Board of Education grant the administration discretion to determine compliance of Board Policy 511A related to residency status for students currently enrolled in ER9 school district and for setting an incremental schedule for invoicing any tuition payments due to the district.
And I would move that you amend that motion to delete the language with respect to residency status and retain all the other verbiage that you used. So
leave the reference to the board policy in there, just take out the residency.
Correct. If you put it up, I would read it aloud for you, but you know.
No, that's fine. And leaving currently enrolled in ER9, or take that out as well.
Correct.
Okay, so now we have moved that the Region 9 Board of Education grant the administration discretion to determine compliance of Board Policy 511A.
With Board Policy, but go on.
With Board Policy 511A for students currently enrolled in ER9 school district and for setting an incremental schedule for invoicing any tuition payments due to the district.
Second.
Okay. All right, so we've got a motion, it's been seconded. Further discussion?
Can we just make sure somebody sends me that?
Yes.
Thank you.
You didn't get that all?
Well, we changed it.
It's on the recording as well. We got it recorded.
I will send it to you right now.
Thank you. And the other motion from earlier too.
So any other
Which one, for the
discussion?
capital plan?
So I have a technical edit. So the policy, and I have it up, is there's the section that pertains specifically to payment of tuition is looks like it's 511C and D.
You just make it 5111 and
all subsequent parts.
Yeah.
There you go.
So just taking out A.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that the motion's amended to remove the A, it's 5111. And I'm just going to say, I'm not in favor of this motion. I don't want us to set precedent. The 511 policy has a 90-day period, which I think is plenty of time for people to find new locations. So I'm not in favor of changing our practices that will potentially set precedent for down the road.
I have a similar concern, and although it's not Region 9's authority, to the extent that there are siblings of students that are at Barlow or want to go to Barlow, I guess a question for the administration: does that tie the administration's hands and would force compliance for the other districts to do the same if they're siblings?
My interpretation, Cheryl, is that this is basically like a 1 year, one-off thing. So if you can't find it within a year.
No, but I think her question was, if we say we're going to take the high school student and there's somebody in Reading in the middle school, we're splitting up the family, or are we causing the Reading board to now adopt a similar practice?
Well,
Not causing them, they would be eligible to, but they could
be eligible, if they want their kids to
we
go.
had this conversation with the chairs of the Reading and Eastern board today. They were receptive to doing something similar, because I told them this issue is going on in all 3 districts. So they're going to have to, I'm going to bring the same question to them for them to address it. So they're going to address it one way or the other.
Look, I would certainly like to provide for what are extraordinary circumstances post-COVID for these kids. Not only are they post-COVID as we emerge from COVID, but they are extraordinary circumstances in terms of buying and selling properties around here. So I don't think that per se we would be setting a precedent, because we're emerging from COVID and these circumstances are largely arising out of our emergence and students' particular circumstances. To that extent, I think you could amend the motion to say,
I was just
for the next school.
I just was doing that now. So then how about this? Move that the Region 9 Board of Education grant the administration discretion for the 2021-2022 school year to determine compliance with board policy 5111 for students currently enrolled in the ER9 school district, and for setting an incremental schedule for invoicing any tuition payments due to the district.
Second.
All right, so the motion's been amended with the year on it.
6 times, but no, that's what we
That's
do.
all right.
Let's get
That's
it
all
right. I'm happy. I'm just,
All right, so
taking swing here.
Any other discussion, questions from board members?
Is this something we should run by the attorney, or will this happen after the fact, or it doesn't need to?
I would say it doesn't need to. You have an established policy. What the motion gives us the latitude to implement the policy with some flexibility to deal with the urgent circumstances that are occurring because of COVID and the real estate market. So at this time next year, it goes away, because the way that the motion was read is only for the 21-22 school year.
No, because I know someone personally whose house was sold out from under them. They were renting it. The person said, "You've got to be out," and they luckily were able to find something, but they were in a panic.
This is what we're talking about. We're talking about people who haven't been able to find something. That's the exact situation we're talking about. So if you understand, you can personally relate to it. That's what the problem these 8 or 9 families in the 3 districts are dealing with.
Right. I think it's pretty clear that the student would have otherwise had to be enrolled in this school year.
Yes.
So we're not talking about anyone who comes into district or comes and approaches the district and says, "Oh, by the way, I couldn't find a place to live." They've been here.
Right.
Exactly.
And effectively, this would potentially grant discretion for prorated tuition, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that way, if they do find a place, we don't charge them for a full year when they found a place. And to Mike's earlier point, we don't have to worry about giving refunds and that sort of thing. So we would probably set up a payment schedule that will, protect the district's resources and also alleviate the burden for the families.
And it also protects the person you mentioned who, might have a June 30 to July 1, transfer, or they get a place August 1, or something opens up, or whatever. Or people who contract to buy a house, but don't actually close. Are they considered residents? I haven't considered that question, but somebody contracts to buy a house, but for whatever reason, they can't move for a 3 years.
That's covered in the policy.
That's covered in the policy, exactly.
Okay.
That situation is in there. It's a 90-day as well.
Okay.
So what would happen if a resident paid the first part of the tuition and then was able to acquire a house within the district shortly afterward? Is there provisions in the policy that they would get refunded because now they live in the district?
No.
Or would they lose that payment?
I would look to refund them because my view is that they were, because the structure I'm talking about is basically prepaying. So if they prepay X number of months and then find accommodations, whether purchase or lease, if they prepaid, they should be refunded for something they prepaid and didn't use.
Again, that's not in the policy.
That's what I was asking.
No, but it's not in the policy, but this goes to the discretion that you're hopefully granting us to set up the payment schedule. And the payment schedule includes.
That's correct. Would be discretionary as part of the practice,
Exactly.
not the policy.
But just for this year?
Yes, it's once again, it's limited to just this year.
All right, further discussion. I'm still opposed to the motion as amended, so.
I have a question. Where does that money go to? In what account do we put?
We have a tuition account, Gina. So we have a tuition account where we pay out tuition, and we have a tuition account where we receive it. So it would go in that account. So you wouldn't get access to it, or your replacement wouldn't get access to it.
I'm not going to have access to it.
It would go to, it's the board's money.
I would like, just as a matter of protection, just to clear this with council. I know we're providing some discretion, but the wording in my mind is very clear in terms of the payment plans. So to Karen's point, even if it's after the fact, it would be helpful to have that protection.
Do that.
Okay, subject to amend the motion to the extent that's subject to review and consent by council.
Yeah.
Subject to review by council or review and consent? What's your preference?
Review and consent. Yeah.
And I'll throw in again, I'm still opposed. To the motion.
I'm curious, do you just believe it would be a precedent, Todd, or do you believe that it's, not economically wise for the district?
I think both of those, as we get more renters, potentially in the future in the towns, and now we've made exceptions to this. I don't think it's fair to past people that have rented and had to move out and didn't get this. So on a variety of levels, I feel sorry for the people that, are not able to rent something within 90 days. But it's not fair to the taxpayers that, are paying here, and somebody moves to another town with lower taxes and can pay and get prorated. It's messy.
It may prove to be better for the taxpayers if we actually collect tuition for these students.
But Todd, it's not.
But if we pay it, and then we collect it 6 months down the road as a refund, and then we don't get it, it's all messy to me. I'd rather not mess
It
with
may
the
be
policy.
messy, but it could be advantageous to the taxpayers if we actually collect the tuition, which is the presumption.
Well, just so you all know, in previous districts, I've had to do this, and the way it works is if the tuition is not paid, academic records are not released. So if you have a senior who's trying to apply to college, guess what? The bills need to be paid. Otherwise, records aren't released, because that's a condition of the agreement. It's a signed agreement that they commit to pay the tuition that's owed. And if they breach that agreement, there'll be repercussions that'll be stated in the agreement.
Right. So again, that's not part of our current policy. So now we need a procedural change to hold their transcripts because they haven't paid tuition.
Look, this could also be a motion that ultimately, the situation could ultimately solve itself for some.
And that's what we're hoping. But if it doesn't, we need to have a contingency plan. Like, I spoke to 2 parents today who are literally, full of angst about what they're going to do because their children are rising seniors who are getting ready to apply to colleges, and, starting over in a new school is causing angst within the families. And we'd like to try to alleviate that as much as possible. And one of them may have a solution at the Joe Barlow level, in that they think they may have found a home in one of the other towns. It creates a problem because they have a younger child who wants to stay in the previous town. So there's a whole lot of complexity we're dealing with, but to Maureen's point, it may solve itself. We hope it does, but if it doesn't, we need to have a plan at least to how we would deal with it.
Right, and I don't want to extend this conversation much further, but I do think to.
Do you have another amendment to your motion?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm responsible for some of those amendments.
Okay.
And
I'm up to about 6 motions. I'm running out of paper.
They're all helpful, and we're a team, and we're trying to do this right, which is fine. To Todd's point, I do feel like at some point down the road at a future meeting, we need to have a discussion because, the previous superintendent used to talk about tuition paying students and in the past, we've talked about tuition paying students. However, the board has never really considered it and talked about that, whether that's something we're in favor of, whether there's a way to do that, and so I think that knowing now that our policy would allow that, and if that was to happen, whether any of us would be surprised or
I think, Mike, respectfully, that's tomorrow's question, not today's.
No, that's what I'm saying. Down the road, this is something that we should discuss, right?
Mm-hmm.
Refer to the policy committee.
Yeah.
Back to policy.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion on it? All right, I'm not even going to begin to repeat it because I think I don't have all the amendments, but we have them all recorded. So I think if everybody's clear on the motion, otherwise we'll repeat it. We'll go ahead and bring it to a vote. So all in favor of the last amended motion, signify by aye. I'm going to do this quickly. So let me just click on the roll call on it. So Mary Lee, yes. Maureen, yes. Gwen, yes. That's Cheryl, yes. Mike, yes. And Karen, yes. Am I missing? And myself will be in the no category still. All right, so it passes.
You forgot Juliet.
Oh, sorry, Juliet. We missed you. Sorry, Juliet. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. I'm going to move you back over onto the middle of my screen. Sorry. All right. So, yeah. So, again, 8 carries 7-1. All right. And moving on to the next item. Eye on our clock here, which is now item D, head of school search process update. So, Dr. Harrison, brief update.
So yes, just to be very brief, today the application deadline closed. I've been in contact with the search consultant. The survey link has gone out, and people have been sharing information regarding their preferences for the next head of school, and follow-up conversation I need to have with the search consultant is related to I just lost the term, parent forum, but also the board chair shared with me a document today that just laid out a list of sort of outstanding items that I think it would be important for us to discuss as a personnel search committee. But that's just a quick update.
Yeah, and so to that point, I think we'll look through that list, and then we'll get a personnel search committee meeting so we can go through the open items, get agreement and timeline. We started that in our last meeting. There are a couple items that we didn't have on there that we need to look at, like press releases and some of those kind of things that we didn't talk about. So,
and Todd, to that point, I just wanted to point out, given that it's a personnel search committee, that could be some of that work could be done via email, as that's a non-meeting.
Yes. Yes, and all board members are part of the personnel search committee. So yes, right. We'll try to expedite the process as much as we can.
Right. Were we aware it wasn't posted on our website? Was that deliberate or?
the,
I don't think that that was deliberate. I know that when positions are posted on our website, they're posted there because it's linked to the application process is through AppleTrack. And so this process was not through AppleTrack, like a typical vacancy is. So it was posted on all of the CT REAP and you just sort of all of the typical sites where administrators would go to look for open positions. It was also sent directly to everyone within the state that currently holds a 092 certification. So it was not just posted, but also actively sent out.
all right, any other questions? All right, moving on then to the new item E, which is the review of 2020, 2021 operating budget line item changes, COVID grant funding projections, and actual expenditures. So I think we covered a little bit of that earlier. Mr. Zachery, on your.
Yeah, I think we covered the budget line items on the
Yep.
COVID grant funding projection and actual expenditures. Dr. Harrison shared some of this earlier. I can just give you some numbers on COVID related expenditures and tell you how much we've been reimbursed and what additional costs we've had. So as Dr. Harrison alluded to earlier, we have spent $5,274 on salaries related to COVID. We have spent $187,479.95 on supplies. These are all as of May 14th. I say that because I delivered some more supplies to Joe Barlow today, which won't be reflected in this, but this is as of May 14th. And we spent on transportation $23,700. This is the extra cleaning that we contracted for. So that's a total of $216,453.95 through May 14th. We've been reimbursed from the state $102,879. That means that the operating budget covered $113,574.95 as of May 14th. As I said, I delivered some N95 masks to Joe Barlow today, so that would not be included in this, and I'm sure there may be a few other small items. So those are all the COVID-related expenses at Joe Barlow for this fiscal year. And I don't know if there's any additional questions beyond that, but we've already received the reimbursement for the state of the $102,000.
So it was my understanding that we were going to get like a more detailed document that was going to have some of these things on there. I know you can look at the budget object summary and that gives us, kind of a broad view of the budget. I guess what I was looking for was, and again, a perfect example was in today's transfer report and was in last month's transfer report, which were items that were not originally in the budget that were purchased or enhanced this year. Again, so it sounded like Dr. Pinn detailed that we had a piece of equipment that we thought we were going to repair, or that we budgeted, more accurately, that we were going to repair. But it seems like now we said it can't be repaired, so we bought a new one. And again, I would like to better understand whether that's, again, a one-off, or whether we had other, examples where there were things that we had budgeted that we were going to repair this, budgeted that we were going to do something a certain way, but then we ended up saying, well, we have some unspent funds, so we're going to buy a new one instead of fixing the old one, or we're going to buy something else because we, that's really what I was hoping to see, not just a big explanation of the budget object summary, which I think doesn't include those details. And the
Mike,
same
we-
thing on the COVID related stuff, to see
Get you the
what
COVID.
we spent on each item and how much we received would have been helpful in a document.
We can send you that because particularly on the reimbursement, that's all detailed in the grant application. So we can send it out to the board. The other stuff that wasn't covered by the grant, we can just give you the report on the account. In this case, account 615, where we coded it as COVID related. If you want to see what was actually purchased, if that's what you're alluding to.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. We'll send it out.
And the same thing with the budget. Okay, the items that I first detailed, that kind of stuff.
Sorry, what are you looking for on the budget side? So what was in budget and what was spent, which is you have in the object summary. Are you looking for something different there?
But what I'm saying, Scott, is Todd, is that, sorry, is that you can't tell from the budget object summary what was budgeted and what was purchased. In other words, last meeting there was $16,000 or something for transportation that we repurposed to buy athletic mats for the pole vaults. Today we've transferred money again from one line item to purchase a piece of equipment, a new piece of equipment to replace the one that we had said we were going to repair. So I guess what I'm looking for is that, again, are these one-offs? Is this just the two of them, or are there more within the budget, things that we decided to replace instead of repair, things that we transferred money from one line item to another to purchase other items?
Mr. Agassi, I can't speak to the replace versus repair, but in regards to the mats, that decision was based on the safety of the athletes and also in order to have it in time for them to have a spring season. So I think that one was an exception that was articulated by Dr. Penn in the last meeting as a safety concern, and also in order for them to have a spring season, which they didn't have last year. There was a timing issue associated with that. So I would definitely call that one a one-off. I don't know if Dr. Penn wants to speak to that, but that was how that situation unfolded with the mats, and it was taken from the athletic transportation budget from the fall, which we didn't have any athletics in the fall, and moved to athletic equipment for the spring.
No, I understand. I guess what my belief is that our policy clearly states that they need to be pre-approved by the board, and I have full confidence the board would have approved them. I just, again, I wonder, the policy does say in an emergency situation where a meeting could not be held to gain approval. And again, it was done in March and it was reported in the middle of April. So I just.
Right. All right. So before we go down that path, I just want to make sure we're clear on what the ask is. So for Mr. Zachery to find how to generate this report. So if we're looking at the electricity line item and you're looking for what transfers came out of that item.
Yeah, and where they went
into that,
and what was, everything, all the transfers, I guess.
Jackson, you basically, it sounds like you want a detailed history of all the transfers from this fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay. Understood.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, just make it clear. I don't want to waste your time generating reports that aren't going to answer the question.
I understand. It'll come in two different formats because remember we have what happened in Phoenix up through December 31st, and then we'll have what happened in e-finance post that. So it'll be essentially two different formats and two different reports because of the change in the financial systems.
Okay. Would that be sufficient, Mike, for what you're after?
No, I can't request how I get the form. I'm just asking for the information. That's all. However it's provided, it's provided. That
Okay.
I just wanted a little more detail than what we're doing in the budget object summary because it's
okay. No, fair enough. All right. So any other questions on that item? So we'll get some follow-up reports. See how it come there. All right. Dr. Pinn, you just thought you were going to get out of here on an earlier meeting on your last one. We're going to hold this one for posterity and get us as late as possible. All right, moving on to the next one. We are up to item F, which is policies for second readings. 4118.1, sex discrimination, harassment in workplace, Title IX, and 5145.446, discrimination, harassment in workplace, Title IX. So do I have a volunteer for my policy committee? Move these forward on second reading. Any other comments?
On second reading, and may they be adopted by the board. Hopefully Gwen will second.
All right.
I'll second it. These are policies
Gwen
that came straight from,
It came straight from the new regulations that will become the old regulation shortly. So we have no choice. We're a little behind the eight ball.
fine with it then.
All right. So I have a motion for second reading and to approve the two policies. Any other discussion?
Yeah. Actually, you're just moving to approve, right? 1 second.
Yeah, moving. Yeah, sorry, moving to approve.
I have a couple technical corrections. So policy 4118.1A refers to Reading Board of Ed. I think that's just a typo. It should be Region 9.
We're trying to
think
streamline them so that they say the same thing across all boards.
Got it.
We should say Region 9.
Yeah, that was the only other comment I
Policies
had.
across all boards to say the same thing.
Got
Is
it.
there any other technical edits, Cheryl, that you saw?
No, those are the only that there were two places that one referred to Reading Board of Ed and then the other one said Reading Public Schools.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And my apologies if I didn't pull them out.
Oh, that's
That's
okay.
We're just gonna revise the motion as corrected, or
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct.
just so that we're,
All right, so we've got a motion. It's been seconded to approve the two policies as corrected. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye, I can see everybody. All right, passes unanimously. Excellent. Moving right along.
Thank you, Policy Committee.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Join us every Friday. I say that every month.
I know, we appreciate it. It's very encouraging. Thank you. All right, moving on to our new item G, course offerings for 2021-2022. So Mike,
so again,
it's over to you.
Well, again, it's a question, but it's also a comment because again, typically we don't get the staffing document until very late, and I know the curriculum committee has worked hard, and I know that we've made statements and given assurances in the past relating to how we would handle course offerings in declining enrollment. And we had, again, I want to be an advocate for every student. And we had talked about being very clear and deliberate in letting students know what we were offering as far as APs when certain courses would not be offered. In other words, we have certain courses that have historically low enrollments. And so one year we may not run AP Chem, but we run AP Bio. And I'm just using an example, taking enrollments out of it, right? And so where we ran into some challenges, and what we said we would do is that we would articulate in the program of studies that AP Chem would run in this year and AP Bio would run in the following year, so that students could plan their schedules accordingly and know how to sequence their course offerings so that they don't miss the opportunity to take the classes, right? And so I received a phone call from actually two parents asking why AP CompGov was not being run this year. And there was 13 students enrolled. And then if you look at the staffing document, there's 13 students enrolled. and then it says minus 13 and it says 0, which means we're not running the course. But when you look at the program of studies, it seems to indicate that we were going to run the course this year. So where I get concerned is that, again, we have to be very deliberate and uphold what we say we're going to do, so that these students who are sequencing and planning their progression of courses can plan properly. And so when we say all of a sudden, when we get to that year, my question is, what is the rationale? Is it because there weren't enough students? Because there was 13 students? Is it because we didn't have a teacher? Is it? And I understand when we get in budget season and these things happen, they happen quickly, and we don't have time as we're formulating the budget to go into these types of questions and discussions that I'm presenting tonight. And I don't, it's not my intent to have an hour-long discussion about this tonight. I just feel it's important that we're true to what we say, and that maybe we can articulate exactly why we changed and what we can do moving forward, so that we don't have repeats of this, or that we can assure our students that when we say we're running a course, that we actually are going to run it. And that's where I am.
So duly noted. I think that the short version to the question is that we staff our courses with the staff that we have. And we cover courses if they are required courses. If we, those are decisions that our department chairs make. Often, as you alluded to, Mike, they have to make it in real time. They make those decisions based on the students that are in the course. So a course like an AP chemistry, if those were juniors that were signed up and there weren't enough to warrant a full class, we're looking at classes of 15 or more in most situations. That might be a situation where Paula Panos, our director of school counseling, reaches out to every one of those students. We don't just cancel a course and tell a student, too bad, out of luck. We give them that path. We just might not always know it when they're signing up for the course. So we still base our enrollment on student interest. So if they're signing up and we can run the course, that's what our plan is. We can't always say that we are going to run a course one year and then it doesn't get the enrollment. And so we have to make those changes and make those decisions. Any student, and there are about 130 or so of them that had to be conflicted out of a course. The counselors are meeting right now with students to get their next choice. They may be conflicted out because a section is closed. We did want to run it, but we don't have a seat for the students in that course. They may be conflicted out because it's what we call a singleton. It's a course that's only offered in one section. And so they have to take the course to go to their second or third choices of courses. So to the extent possible, Mike, we try to let people know, but it's not always possible, and those decisions have to be made. And that's why we hire the best people to make those decisions. And that's what the department chairs are doing.
And I appreciate the explanation. I just, again, trying to advocate for all students. If there was a similar class, for other students, and we were made aware that for some reason we weren't going to run it based on staffing shortage, unavailability of a staff member to run that section. Again, I just feel like it's something we should work on moving forward. At the very least, we tried to kind of do that, and I feel really bad that students were made promises and that we've changed them, and I don't actually understand why. I know why we may change them, but I don't understand why 13 students in a certain class would be not enough to run an AP, and I don't understand why we would say we were doing that and not. And again, things happen, but it would be helpful if we knew during the budget season that yes, we said we were running this, but we're not, just so that we're transparent.
Right, but is your question about that particular course? Because I mean, they do try to tell us what what courses are being offered and how many people are enrolled, and it does change right through the course of time. So are you just concerned in that particular situation? Want to know what happened with that class?
Correct. I want to know what happened with that class, obviously, but again, I don't know if that's, again, the one-off or because
Sure.
it's difficult. We get the staffing document late and we can't really see it. It's budget season, and I just,
Yeah.
I can get back to you on that. I didn't know this was an agenda item, so we'll get back to you with the answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anything else on that item?
Well, I'll just add, Mike, it's not answering your question about AP CompGov specifically, but the curriculum committee did get a brief report from the administration in terms of what sections, number of sections. I can send that to the board just for their information. And we do have, we did say, I still have to write the minutes, but we did say that we want to get a readout before school starts on what the actual final distribution of the courses are.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And I know, again, it's a moving target, and we're trying to do it during budget season as well. But yeah, anything we can do to help improve it and provide transparency, what we're offering and what's changing, would be helpful before students get locked in. Okay. If nothing else, then that concludes, I think, I'm looking up beside my notes here. I think that concludes our discussion possible action item sections 8. So we'll now move on to item 9, public comment. And we still do have some members of the public on. So I'd ask if anybody would like to speak, raise your hand or wave in the window. Please state your name, address. Limit your comments to 2 minutes and to anything that's on the agenda. We'd appreciate that, and we will record because it is very late and we'd like to get through all the comments and get the meeting wrapped up here this evening. So I see Anne's hand up. So let me just go Anne and make sure you're unmuted. Okay, and go ahead, Anne.
Todd, good evening. Good evening, board. I will make it as brief as possible. To be clear, this is a regular board.
Address, sorry, before we start your time.
Name and address. Sorry. Morning Glory Drive, Easton.
Sure. Thank you, Anne. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. To be clear, this is a regular Board of Education meeting, so the public can discuss anything at this meeting. It's only special meetings that are required to follow whatever special information. Hopefully there won't be many comments after 11 o'clock. God bless to the high schoolers of Joel Barlow as they go through their continuing of the school year, the last 30 days. Concerns of continuing mask, as I call it, the mask charade. Parents need to contact their school board, school nurses, the superintendent in regard to the masking of children. Information came out today about Dr. Fauci and his relationship of COVID, how much he has been involved in it. So hopefully in the next week or so, if people contact their legislators, we need to open up Connecticut and let our children breathe freely and be free citizens again. Concern in regard to DEI, this is psychosexual manipulation of children. My background is counseling, education, early childhood ed. Dr. Robert Woodson came out recently in regard to the negatives on critical race theory. I have sent things to board members, videos in regard to Dr. Woodson, who came to Connecticut about 4 weeks ago. The critical race theory is also DEI, which is Orwell doublespeak. Concern of SEL. Social emotional learning is largely garbage. It's not academic education. Learning that people need to know that Common Core is developmentally inappropriate and SRBI is a game of the system. I've been saying this for 10 years. So if anybody likes any information, please contact me offline. Concern of the financial component of our Joel Barlow High School. 28,000 or more. I haven't done the financials since we just passed the budget. very much an egregious amount of money being spent. And Helen Keller, at the last meeting, we found out that the NWEA report.
And can you wrap up your comments? Thank you.
Will do. Parents and residents are concerned about the children getting a great education. I want to work with the Board of Education of all three boards, or of the Easton boards, in regard to doing a curriculum audit. I was so happy to hear Mike D'Agostino's questions about the curriculum. We need to do better.
Okay, thank you. And last
Concern
comment.
of human capital.
Time is up.
One more second. This is what Stephanie Pierson Ugol had posted. This is human capital. Human capital is not academic education. And just let me clear up. Consulting is problematic because the RFP is not being provided. The policy committee doesn't exist because there's no tri-board policy committee. It's only a Region 9.
All right, thank you, Ann. All right, thank you, Ann. All right, any other members of the public? I see Dana Benson. So name and address again, 2 minutes.
Dana Benson, 34 Pond Road, Easton. Dana Benson, Pond Road, Easton. So I'm glad to hear the high school students, well, let's take it to the top. $260,000 sounds to me like a lot for carpets. Are all the classrooms carpeted is a rhetorical question. I know this isn't a dialogue, so if anybody can let me know about that. Also, did Mr. Zachery use the freeze frame column headings, freezes frames when he goes through the budget on the Excel screen? It's very helpful. Freeze the frames so the column headings go down. On the survey, I repeat, I've submitted a letter signed by 16 citizens expressing reservations on the survey. I'd urge you to take a look at it. I understand after all the important and complicated issues you guys have dealt with tonight, that the survey and the content is really small potatoes. And I'm just amazed at the quick thinking on the feet and coming up with a resolution and solutions to a complicated problem. So particularly the tuition thing, with kids moving out of the district, that was really something. Bravo. Without going through all the questions, there's just one that really troubles me. Number 33, regarding those I can turn to for help. At least one of these adults and I share a common check all that apply. Race, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion do not have these things in common. And my question is, why is it that we think that teachers have to share the same race, gender, identity, sexual identity in order to understand students? To me, we're diminishing the idea that a teacher is someone who can empathize and imagine another person. I understand the idea of benchmarking so we can measure ourselves in the future, but I just want to plant that one idea. And the other thing on the staff survey, nobody's talked about that, but, asking teachers, and I know it's optional, they opt in, opt out, but whether they're gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, straight, heterosexual, wow. I mean, if they asked me that or gave me a survey like that in the workplace, I would not have a good reaction to it. And the last thing is, do we have access to LGBTQ plus history and events on school, through school computers? Wow. I mean, why not BDSM, right? Bondage, domination.
All right, thank you, Dana. Yep, your time's up, Dana. Thank you. All right, any other members, public, like to comment? All right, seeing none, then we'll move on. Sorry, missed the hand.
Yep.
Hi, Phyllis, go ahead. Sorry, name and address, please. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, hi, I'm Phyllis Rhodes, 116 Gallows Hill Road in Reading, Connecticut. I would just like to quickly weigh in with my support for Dr. Harrison, my support for all of the DEI efforts that are being made, my support for the survey. I've been participating in those meetings. I feel very strongly that the work being done by that committee is excellent work and very much needed work. And I just wanted to voice that to all of you. I thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Phyllis. All right. Any other members of the public? All right. Seeing none, then I'll move on to item 10, board member comment. I see a few hands. Maureen, I think I saw you first, and then Juliet. Let's go ahead, Maureen.
I just want to say a public thank you to Gina for everything, and that we'll miss you deeply and forevermore.
Thank you. Julia?
I would also like to say thank you to Gina and best of luck in the future. And then my additional comment would be on the DEI survey. And I do not have a student at Barlow, but I have a younger student, and I have not received any communication about opting him out. And I had mentioned that I did want to opt him out. So I just want to make sure that parents are aware of that.
All right, thank you. Other board members? Karen?
I would also like to add my personal thanks to Gina for the many years that my kids went through the school, and for, you know, the great work that, I mean, they both did really well, and I'm certainly very happy with the Joel Barlow education they received. And I did find what it's going to say on your award. It's going to say, presented to Gina Marie Pinn in gratitude for your service to Joel Barlow High School, 7/14/08 to 6/30/21. Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. Simone Sinek. So thank you very much.
Excellent. I think that's excellent comments to end on, excellent words to end the meeting on. So any other board member comments? Otherwise, I will look for a motion to adjourn. And again, a collective thanks, Gina, for everything. A motion to adjourn from board member.
So moved.
Gwen, Gwen and Cheryl. All right.
Yes.
All right. I got Gwen and Cheryl. All right. All right. All in favor? Aye. And we will be officially adjourned at 11:11 p.m.
Oh, that's perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, Gina. Well, it's a
Thank
historic
you
time.
all.
We'll document that for. Very nice.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Good night.